UNWANTED.
What's up? This is a Ripple Effect podcast special episode. These are called the Ricky Rants with Fans episodes. It's when my Patreon supporters get to do a show with me. So if you guys are new to this, we do this once a month. It's exclusively just for my Patreon supporters. We do a podcast together. We talk about everything and anything. Also, remember, I have a Rockfin show, Ricky Rants on Rockfin, not to get confused with Ricky Rants with Fans, which is the Ripple Effect podcast show. Rant with the Fans, and merch store. If you guys want to get some merch, Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. You can get all this stuff in the show description. So I think that's it. I already have some people waiting in the waiting room. So let me get these people in here. Here we go. Sean, what's up?
What's up, buddy? How are you?
What's up, Sean? How you been?
Good, man. Just living life.
Podcasting away.
Oh yeah, creating content.
What's that? Who else we got here? What's up, Zach? How are you?
You good?
Is it? I guess we can get going. Yeah, we're rolling. I'm always recording, so we're good to go. Thanks, guys, for being with me. I want to do a Sunday episode because I know a lot of people are like, oh, during the week it's hard, it's late. So I'm like, oh, let me do a Sunday afternoon one, see if it's a little easier for people. So who knows who will jump in here or whatnot. But it should be fun. We'll chit chat for a little bit. Not a lot of people are joining Patreon. More people are leaving Patreon. I'm sure you guys have been keeping up with all that stuff. You guys got any comments?
The Last American Vagabond.
Yeah.
It's absurd. Like I think Patreon was dictating that they wanted Whitney Webb to actually remove content off her own website. I mean, who gives them the right to, dictate that type of content?
Yeah, I heard Ryan say that too. So he was on my buddy Richard Grove's show, Grand Theft World. I almost said Grand Theft Auto, Grand Theft World, and Ryan was saying on there, same thing, same situation where they were basically telling him to delete, all the stuff that had to do with medical stuff, and it wasn't. I don't think it was even stuff that he was posting on Patreon. I think, like you said, it was stuff on his website or something along those lines. And it's like, I don't get it. I mean, I'm still on there. I think a little bit has to do with the fact that I don't post any content on there. I'm always kind of weary on, like, if I start posting content on a platform like Patreon, I'm going to end up getting kicked off eventually because I'm going to be talking about stuff that they don't like. But this way, I can still use the platform. I can still use. Can you guys hear that music? Sorry about that. Sorry. That was Pro Tools in the background if you heard that music. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's frustrating. I just talked about this on my last Ricky Rants on Rockfin.
Yeah, I caught that.
Yeah, did you catch? Yeah, how frustrating it is that, like, us as content creators, like, all we want to do is, like, we just want to have interesting conversations. We just want to do the things that we love, do our art, be creative, and then just put it out there. And now we have to, like, learn tech savvy stuff. We have to learn how to have our own servers. We have to do all this shit. So it's like we're treated like we have to be some underground militia, trying to find a way to work with outside the system, when all the fuck we're doing is just trying to have conversations with interesting people openly, and that's it, but yet that's too dangerous.
Crushing the little guy.
Yeah.
Domestic terrorism. That's what we are. We're domestic terrorists in their eyes.
And I don't blame you for, trying to stick on, and stay on Patreon as long as you can. Like, in a way, I think it's kind of funny that your content's still on there and they haven't got you yet.
I'm still stunned.
I would definitely keep looking for, a backup plan.
Yeah,
Like, I'd like to see the rest of your podcast up on Rockfin. Besides right now, I think you only have the rants on there.
well, it's funny you say that, actually. Apparently great minds think alike, because I actually, so the guy, Matt, Matt from Content Safe, he's the guy that you might have heard him on a few Union of the Unwanted shows. And he's the guy who basically has this technology, the software where I can upload onto YouTube, and then he basically syncs that YouTube account with my BitChute account, my Odyssey account, my Float account. So that way I don't have to spend time uploading on all these platforms, putting show description information in all these platforms. I do it in one spot, and then it syncs all together. Similar to like our RSS feed, right? Like I upload to Podomatic, and it's on Spotify, iTunes, it's everywhere. And I don't have to keep, touching it and keep uploading it and keep, making sure it's here or there. They do all that work for me. So I recently just hit them up about like, hey, this stuff, I mean, it's just a matter of time before I'm off YouTube. And now I'm more concerned about PayPal, which makes me think like, okay, maybe I should get a little more serious about Rockfin and putting all my content on there. So I was like, hey, is there any way of syncing my YouTube account with Rockfin also, so that way I can get all my archives on there and I'll have it as free content, and at least that way it's just at another alternative location where even if I do get kicked off YouTube, it'll be also on Rockfin. So because I'm at the thinking where the more places the better, so I just don't have the time to invest in uploading all these places. So he solved that issue, which was nice. But now with PayPal, I mean Patreon, and who knows, maybe PayPal down the line too will be having issues with it. But with Patreon now going at Whitney, going at Ryan, and I know a lot of other people have had issues with Patreon. It's just a matter of time before I'm sure many of us are going to be having issues there. So I'm just kind of looking ahead a little bit and thinking like, okay, if I put all my stuff on Rockfin, and that's the thing, I don't even want to dedicate all my stuff to Rockfin, because we could have one day the same issue on Rockfin where either they get attacked or they end up having a different business approach where they're like, okay, we're getting all these sponsorships and we're getting all these investors, so now we want to kind of tone things down. So I like to have like just my content as many places as possible. So if something does happen, at least everything's backed up. I think it was, I mean, in mid 2020, I still only had my video content only on YouTube. And so quickly, I'm just like, okay, we got to find these alternatives. I didn't care that much because of the fact that like 99% of people listen to the show. They don't watch the show. They listen to the audio. It's like, again, it could be because I'm shadow banned. Maybe that's why I do bad on the video platforms. But I also think it's long form conversation. Most people, it's more convenient just to kind of throw it on your phone and have it in, in the earbuds or listening to it while commuting. So to me, the audio was always kind of my focus. The video was kind of secondary, but I know some people still like the video. And honestly, the more places it's at, because right now it's like, where are you going to hear, if you're new to alternative media and you want to seek out some interesting content creators, some interesting people who are going against the grain and asking questions, how do you get exposed to that? If you use Google or YouTube, you're fucked, because what are you going to get? CBS News, CNN? You're like, wait, nobody. You got to answer, Sean.
Mm-hmm. So have any of you been familiar with Clubhouse?
I've heard about it. I'm going to look into it.
I don't think I'm big enough of a celebrity to be asked to go on there.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, if you're on Rockfin, I mean, they denied me to get on Rockfin. So, it's a free platform. Everybody's on there right now. It's only iPhone and iOS right now. They're going to open it up eventually to everybody, but it's like the wild west in there. So between podcasting and Clubhouse, those are the last two places where it's free speech all the way around, right? They're not coming after anybody yet. And it's a really good organic place to grow your audience. Like I've been going on there and starting a club myself and going on and making rooms and connecting with folks. So here's a perfect example. So remember how if you wanted to start a podcast, the only place to really go to actually do it for free or figure out how to do it for free was like a YouTube channel, right? You go and listen to the YouTubes and everything else. But any other more specific advice that they didn't have on there was always behind a paywall, right? You'd have to go to podcasting 101 and sign up for their class and their stuff. Well, over on Clubhouse, they have rooms that are doing nothing but giving that information away for free, from monetization to all kinds of different things. So if you were to go over there and start a club, like I was thinking about starting one, calling it the alternative perspective, right? And then underneath that alternative perspective, you go and you find your people and start following all these different type of people that would be in that. Like there's conspiracy rooms in there, there's all kinds of different stuff. So you go in and you follow all those people, and hopefully they'll follow you back, because it's so new right now. Everybody's kind of just trying to follow for follow. And it's more organic because you can actually go in there and speak on stuff that you know about and add value to that actual room. And the people will automatically just follow you because they want to hear, they like what you're saying. And so like I've gone into some rooms where let's say some sober rooms, right? Some sober living rooms, and talking about my past and everything else. And immediately when people identify with you, I've come out of there with 25 follows, and those transferred into 7 follows on Instagram and 10 follows on Twitter, because you link your Twitter account and your Instagram account to that. And so it's just about figuring out how to do it. You know what I mean? But I mean, how many of us have the time that are actually creating content to go and learn new platforms? That's the part that's the difficult, because it takes time.
Yeah, it's so it basically is like a chat room where you have the ability to follow people that you like in that chat room.
Yeah, so remember the old school days? I don't know how old you are, but remember the old school chat line, party line, the phone party line that you would be able to call in, like Live Links or whatever. It was a phone based one, and you would call in, and it would cost you like $2.99 a minute, and you can
Damn.
talk to, yeah, you can talk to people, right? And it's just like a rodeo of different people talking over each other, and you're trying to, like, you'll hear something from somebody and they'll go, oh, hey, you, I want to talk to you. Let's have a conversation amidst this chaos of conversations, right? And so this is a more organized way of doing it. Plus you can throw your profile stuff on there, you can link your social media to it, but it's a way more organic way of getting a following, because people can actually hear you, versus Twitter, or you're just dealing with text, right? And Instagram, you're dealing with pictures. So you're knowing who you're following, and you actually get a glimpse of who they are through them speaking. And that's why it's working.
Well, I remember Tim Dillon and Rogan were just talking about Clubhouse recently. I'm trying to think if they discuss who owns it, who's running it. Do you know anything about those details? Because that's always the concern, right? A good idea.
Has it been smeared heavily yet?
Because it's so new, it's still in the beta.
Well, I was going to say, one thing I do like about Rockfin is the fact that not everybody can join. So,
Sean would disagree with that.
No, I can't join.
Well, I mean,
hey, Sean, who'd you talk to? Zach, I'll get right back to you, but email me, because I don't know who you talked to. I'll see if I can help out with that in any way.
I don't know what their criteria was. Is it because you don't like my content, or is it because my content's not pulling a shitload of views?
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know either. I know a lot of it's been word of mouth. Like other content creators will help out by saying, hey, they do good work or whatever. That's how I got in there, or that's how they offered me to go to Rockfin. Was Sam was like, hey, here's a couple content creators you should think about bringing in. So that might be, but yeah, I'll see if I can help out with any of that. But you're right, Zach. I kind of agree with the fact, obviously, in some cases, like Sean's case, it's not always the great, but the outcome's not always great. But they're having some restrictions is probably good, right, Zach?
Yeah, it's a lot harder for it to be smeared as like a right-wing conspiracy side, or something of that matter. Like earlier, I was interested in you getting your videos up on there, because sometimes I will, watch a lot of stuff through the TV, through like a YouTube app or something. And if I'm not mistaken, just watching videos on Rockfin will give you like a small Ray tokens. So, anytime I could watch a creator on there and they get some type of monetization would be better.
Yeah, the Ray token thing's a little confusing to me. Like it's it's I see it pop up in my wallet. I actually set up some wallet just because of Rockfin when they first wanted me to go over there. I'm like, how do I get paid? I'm like, what are you guys talking about? What's a Ray token? I'm so confused. And then they had me set up a wallet, which came into it ended up working out having one because after we did the cryptocurrency Bitcoin episode of the Union of Unwanted, I'm like, okay. I'm like, I spent all this time talking about Bitcoin, gathering people to talk about it. I'm literally talking to people who are making money off it. I'm like, I should buy some. So I eventually end up using the wallet and buying some. But the Ray token thing's a little confusing on how to cash it out or how to actually make it into something you can use it with. But I mean, I'm sure there's some science to it, and there's a lot of people who've been on there longer because I procrastinated for quite a bit. So I know Sam's been on there for a much longer time, and some other people. So they seem to like it, and Whitney and Ryan. So it's
I watched for that Revenge of the Altcoins episode.
I know we do need to do one of those. The Matt from Content Save's like, dude, when are you going to do the Revenge of the Altcoin? Because I know Hotep Jesus would be down. I'm sure Matt would be down from Content Save. The Float guys and girls, Aaron and oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. Kingsley would definitely join us. I mean, it definitely seemed a little cultish, a little bit. There's a handful of people on that episode that were just like would not even entertain the idea that another type of cryptocurrency was relevant at all. And so it just, to me, it made me a little, because a lot of us, like, I think I said this when I talked to Hotep not too long ago on my show, like a lot of us are, when Bitcoin came about, we were already into the whole realm of like, the issues with banking and debt and all that stuff. So Bitcoin just came, and then it's like, oh, this is a great solution to this problem we keep talking about, like central banking. And I think a lot of other people, Bitcoin came around, they're like, oh, this is a cool idea. I love it. This is the best idea. And then they're like, oh yeah, and I don't like central banking either. I don't think it was their first motivation. It was more about Bitcoin, because to me, it's like, doesn't matter. Like, I don't care which cryptocurrency succeeds, or which one really could or will become a one that we could use in everyday life. I don't have any alliance to any of these. So it was weird the way they reacted. Another thing that Hotep said that's pretty funny, it's like, they want to call it money, but none of them want to spend it. Like, there's everybody who has Bitcoin, like everybody just holding on to it. Nobody wants to cash out, nobody wants to spend it on anything. I mean, maybe it's because it's just, they look at it as a investment and they see it going up. I'm like real late to the party in regards to buying something. I only bought like a couple $100 of it. And so that's it. But I mean, some of these people who bought it years ago, I mean, they must seriously, if they held on to it, they must be seriously in the positive in regards to how much money they've made off it so far. So I mean, I like the idea. I like the idea of having control of your money. I mean, even the Ray token, the fact that I don't have to deal with a bank, like it just goes from wherever the hell it starts to my digital wallet, and then I can do what I want with it, and like nobody else has control over it. Like, I like not having that middleman. That's nice. The only thing is, it is kind of sketchy, the history of Bitcoin. Like, we can't pretend that like there's not a possibility, and I'm not saying it's a large possibility, but there's a possibility that whoever created it could have, they could know a way to like sabotage it or control it even behind the scenes. I mean, if this guy was that advanced or that intelligent, why couldn't he put like a back door or something, something like that? So, I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying that most of these like hardcore Bitcoin guys, if you even entertain the idea that that's possible, they lose their fucking mind. They go off the rails. So it's but yeah, I mean, you guys, I'm sure, know my opinion. I mean, I think that freaking income tax is ridiculous. I mean, there's a lot of people like in Massachusetts who did their taxes early, and apparently a lot of that stimulus money that they were getting they're being taxed for. And now they're passing like a new bill, I guess, because I was talking to a couple who's friends of mine, and that's what they're into. They're CPAs, and they're like, oh, there's a new bill, so then you don't get taxed for that money. But anybody who like, you know, did their taxes early, they're getting taxed for that fucking money. And that's, I mean, to me, that's crazy. Like, it's like you got that money, that stimulus money, because of the fact that the government put you in a shitty situation. So they're responsible for your financial shitty situation. And then you get punished for the money that they supposedly gave you to help you. So all they really did was give you your tax money early. You know, in many cases, that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing people say, like, I'm not getting shit back in taxes. Like, they're basically considering my stimulus money my tax money, and they deducted that from my tax money. So, you know, I got screwed anyway. So the whole thing, I mean, the whole game's rigged. The whole thing's just, you know, when people still get caught up in this whole theater of things, it just drives me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, there's pros and cons to a lot of the cryptos out there. But even if you think Bitcoin is the best, why not still have multiple options? You know, multiple things to use as currency. Like the situation we're in now, everybody has to use the dollar to buy things. You know, and even though we can hold gold and silver, we can't use that as a currency. And I know South Carolina is actually introducing a bill to try to make it to be usable as a currency again. You know, who knows if that'll pass? But you know, regardless, I don't think you should put all your eggs into one basket, and we should be able to have multiple choices in what we use.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it anyways. I mean, I know I don't have any. I had somebody on that was pretty he knew a lot about Ethereum and the different things that you can do with Ethereum, and how you can make all kinds of different stuff. It wasn't just about money. It was, there's a bunch of different things that you can do with it that could possibly help society in different ways. But I mean, I don't know enough about it. It's just too confusing, and I don't have the money to spend on it anyways. So I'm just like, well, I'll wait until I do get some money, and maybe I'll start thinking about it.
It's funny because I'm the same way, where when people start talking about like investments and stuff like that, I'm like, I'm tuned out, because I'm like, I don't have any money to invest. I'm like, what do I care about this? You know, it's like, I'd rather, it's weird, because it's like, I don't know if you guys caught the last Union of Unwanted with Hotep on the cult episode. It was a good episode, you know, and every time you see an interview with Hotep, he actually was just on Macroaggressions with Charlie Robinson, and he was on, he did a couple on the Black Pill podcast. He's done a couple episodes, and then when he was on my show, it's funny because at times I hear him speak and I'm like, okay, he's not motivated by money. There's other motivations that are motivating him to pursue, you know, these journeys and these goals. And then other times I'm like, I think he's just motivated by money. You know, like he's just
hard to pinpoint.
What's that?
I said he's kind of hard to pinpoint, really.
He is, yeah. I have a hard time like understanding if he's just like a typical really good business savvy person, or if there's more there. You know, if there's more, like if he actually has some bigger goals. Like he said on the occult episode, which I ended up missing, because my wife had her 40th birthday party, but which obviously if I missed, I'd be dead by now. But it's you know, it's one of those things where he was talking about how like people with money, right? Like if you have cars, houses, all these material things, people listen. So it was almost like he was like, you know what? Like if you want to change the world, if you want to do something, then you need these things. You need to show them that you understand the game, or you can, you know, like it's worth listening to me, that I understand the way things work. But when does that pursuit of those material things for that outcome, or for that reason, when do you get just caught up in the material things? When do you get just caught up in like, okay, let me get all this money and get all these material things so people listen, and then you get obsessed with these material things, and you're like, okay, I don't even care about the message now, I'm just enjoying gathering more money for me, you know, and it becomes kind of greedy a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, I want to believe that he, you know, people like him, but the thing is, too often I hear people like him, and I, like Zach said, I have a hard time pinpointing them. I'm not sure if they're using their pursuit of money, they're justifying it by saying, oh no, I'm doing it for bigger things, for more important things, or if they're actually, you know, pursuing those more important things and have they can kind of see the whole picture and realize that there's more to the world than the material life. And yet they just understand money's a part of that process if you want to have an impact. So it's weird. It's weird. I mean, I've always been one of those people that I love learning. I love just trying to understand the world and myself, and trying to self-reflect on all these things and go on these journeys like I did with the podcast of hearing interesting ideas. And to me, it's like, if I was focused on making money and investing money and building businesses for money's sake, that would get in the way of all these other things that actually I think make me a better person, you know. So it's, I don't know, what do you guys think?
Well, I thought it was a little odd to me that he said that, he never used social media for any kind of fun. It was all about, making money and making, raising this platform. And I was thinking about how you and everybody else, y'all use social media to connect and make connections that have lasted, long past, it turned into actual friendships. And for him to just say it was all about money was a little bit off put.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious if one day he'll be, and I'm sure I'll have him back on. And this is the thing, we get this in this, I don't know if you guys listened to the show I had when I had him on as a solo guest on my show, but we got in this little back and forth about capitalism, right? And I feel like,
That's really interesting.
yeah, well, the thing is, this is kind of the way I look at it. Like, I feel like a lot of people who spend much of their day and life pursuing money, if they admit that there's some flaws in capitalism or there's some evil aspects to it, it's almost like it has a effect on the way they look at what they're doing with their lives. It's like, oh wait, capitalism can't be evil because capitalism is how I live my life. I live my life by, being a go-getter, figuring out how to make more money, all these things. And if you say capitalism has some flaws, then that means I might have some flaws in my thinking, because I think this is 100% good. Like, no ideology is 100% flawless. I mean, every ideology has issues. This idea that, like, people say, oh, well, capitalism has created all these good things. It's like, well, you're also ignoring all the bad things. You're ignoring the fact, and I think I brought it up on the show, and we kind of, we I don't know if he didn't directly, I guess, answer the question, but I think I mentioned something about, like, what if a company puts chemicals in the water or something like that because it's cheaper to dispose of it that way compared to disposing of it properly. Then isn't that capitalism? Isn't that one of the flaws of capitalism, because they're so obsessed and so directly, and some people are like, I think he said something about, like, oh, capitalism is not morally bad. I'm like, no, it's not about morals. It's about the lack of. It's about not letting the morals even get involved in your thinking at all. What makes you a bad business person is using your morals at all in business. I mean, if you can look at everything as, like, just a business decision, it's all about the ones and zeros. It's not about, like, personal effect on anybody, or if I need to cut payroll, my boss says, hey, we got to cut payroll, we're losing money. If there's somebody that I know is feeding a family and is struggling and needs a job, like, I don't even think about those things. What makes me a good employee is me saying, no, I'll make this tough decision of firing them regardless. What makes me a bad employee is saying, hey, I'm going to keep this guy hired who I could do without, but because he needs the money, I'll make a little less profit, but at least he can feed his family. Like, those are two completely different people. We have a system that rewards, and I've said this a bunch of times, we have a system that rewards people that think like that are morally, questionable, that or don't even really worry about morals at all. They just don't even look at business life or their job life as a place where morals are even a factor. It's not something you even think about. You just look at everything as, like, okay, what helps the business or what helps the bottom line, and that's it. And it's not that capitalism's inherently bad, because, like I always say, capitalism isn't inherently bad, just like socialism isn't inherently bad. Like, in a perfect world, in a perfect world where we could say, hey, let's all contribute a little bit, and then we have these services, and then everything just works out, and there's no corruption, there's no mismanagement of money, none of these things. In a perfect world, it would work just fine. You look at, like, our roads, you look at all these things, it's those are socialist ideas. I mean, the postal service, socialist idea, having police officers, firemen. I got once in a debate with a police officer about socialism, and he's actually a friend of mine. And I'm like, dude, you do realize like you wouldn't exist if we didn't have any socialist ideas like in a part of our society, because having police officers is a socialist idea. He's like, oh no, it's not. I'm like, no, it is. And I think what happens is that we become a victim of bad word, good word, badism, goodism, and we don't even know what they actually mean. Like I constantly go back and like, I mean, just recently, actually, after that Hotep show, I went back and because he was talking about the history of capitalism, I'm like, you know what? I haven't looked into this shit in a long time. Because when you get into conspiracy theories and alternative media, one of the first places you dive into is like banking and the history of banking, central banking, all this stuff. And I'm like, I haven't got into that information in a long time. I'm like, let me go back into that. So I'm diving deep into like the history of capitalism. Then I'm diving deep into the history of Marxism, because people again start using these terms and they don't really know what exactly they mean or what they stand for. So I'm going back and forth and into these things, just trying to get like, trying to just grasp on what exactly was the purpose of these things, what was the intentions, all this stuff. And I don't think people do that. People just decide like, okay, socialism is bad. Now, for the rest of my life, I'm just gonna keep saying socialism is bad. Somebody brings up socialism, somebody brings up communism. I mean, communism, it's much harder to defend communism than it is socialism. But even I've talked to people from China, and one of my good friends, his wife is from China. We've talked about like the ideologies of communism. Like in a perfect world, maybe it'd work. I don't think it's a good system. I don't think it's something that would work. But I can see somebody being convinced that maybe it can if if it was used the way it I guess it was thought out. But so yeah, I mean, it's this idea that people just throw around these terms, and in many cases like don't even know exactly what they mean, or if they do, they've decided, okay, I looked it up, this word's bad, this word's good, and then you stop thinking, you stop rediscovering like what does this really mean. And then the thing is, a lot of the stuff, it's like a fucking holy book. Like there's a little different interpretations of it, so some people will say Marxism stands for this, other people will say no, Karl Marx was for that, other people say Karl Marx meant this when he said that, and whatever. So it's like you have to get all these different interpretations, and you have to come up with a conclusion. Okay, what did he really mean? What was he trying to pursue? What was he trying to do? So all this soul searching, like, to me, is just, it's the one job that we should constantly be doing is challenging our own thoughts and ideas, and trying to rediscover new thoughts and ideas. And too often when you talk to people, like there's something that's attractive in regards to confidence, right? When you see somebody like Hotep, he's very confident. He has stuff that he stands for. He seems like he's done his research, he knows his shit. And then there's something attractive about that, where just like, yeah, man, like he must be right, because he sounds like he must be right. But we should always question people. We should always even when they did the occult Union of the Unwanted show, I liked the back and forth. I liked what was going on. And I remember I was at my wife's birthday party, and I'm in a group text with Midnight Mike, Sam, and Charlie. And usually during the Union of the Unwanted, we always have our phones on in that group text in case we need to do something, or somebody needs to go, or something happens, and we need to all kind of stay on the same page during the show. And I remember seeing the group text message, and somebody, I don't know if it was Sam, and they're like, "Oh, this shit's getting hot," and I'm like, "Damn it, I gotta listen to this episode." I'm like, "I can't believe I missed it." And then after the party, I actually ended up watching the whole episode that night, and there was like back and forth, and I liked it. I thought like that's good. I was telling the guys the next day, I'm like that was good. I'm like, that's what you want. If you have a big roundtable discussion like that, you don't want it to be just a giant echo chamber of everybody saying the same shit. You want ideas to be challenged. Now, the hard part is gathering people who are not going to get defensive or angry when their ideas get challenged, because everybody loves challenging other people's ideas. Nobody likes their ideas being challenged. That's why I find a shortcut on by avoiding all that by just saying I don't have any ideas. I avoid all that by saying I'm not married to any idea. You can't shit on me on my ideas, because I'm like, I'm here now. I'll be here. I'll be somewhere else later. I'm like, I'm open to everything. So, but that's also the way most of us should be, because that's how you actually discover what makes the most sense. I did a podcast, a Rockfin podcast called Philosophy versus Ideology, and what kind of sparked this idea of it was Daniele Bignelli when he was on my show. We were talking about ideologies and how they're like almost inherently dangerous, because what it does, like once you decide this is my ideology, then you basically stop thinking. Like it's like, okay, I've decided, like I've explored all the possibilities and this is the one that makes the most sense to me. Well, what happens when you decide that internally? You basically stop pursuing more ideas. You stop questioning things. So, once you adopt a ideology, a lot of times the negative thing can be that it stops you from thinking. It stops you from that whole process of thinking and constantly exploring ideas. And that's why I love philosophy, because philosophy has no concrete answers. It's the same questions being asked over and over again, being debated over and over again, and nobody ever says like, hey, all the philosophers in the world agree on this is reality, or this is that, or that. It's like they're constantly debating, and I love that, because that's kind of, nothing can be 100% true or factual. Like there's always different shades and different sides and different perspectives that could debate just about anything. So to me, deciding that this is right or this is 100%, the ideology that makes the most sense, it stunts your growth. You basically, have stopped growing as a person and as a thinker.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that if we were living in a perfect world, we would be taking the best elements of all the systems and combining them. What works in Marxism, what works in socialism, what works in communism, what works in uh, whatever it is, Stalinism, and you take all of the best elements, and kind of like what what they're doing in Portugal with the when they legalized the drug or decriminalized drugs. What was the best parts of every, like if we were going to do that in the States, and I know that Portland's doing it, but I mean if you really wanted to do it and you really wanted to help and you really cared about making the world a better place, or your society a better place, you would look at all of the elements and find out what the best parts of them are and try to build a program or a system that revolves around that, because the one that we're in is obviously not working. And then also too, to go to your point about socialism and what people don't understand about it is that, okay, yeah, we've got the fire department, we've got all these services that are socialist by nature, right? But we also have, when you think about the bailouts and everything else and the big corporations, well, they're in a socialist system because they privatize the gains and they socialize the losses on their business. That's why they get the bailouts and they get everything else. That's socialism.
Yeah, they say that all the time. It's like all the capitalists are all for capitalism and government staying out of their business while they're making money. And then when you have the '08 crash, it's like, how about you taxpayers help pay for our bonuses and our vacations and all this other stuff. So it's, yeah, I mean, without a, I mean, but aren't all countries, this is the thing I always say, aren't all countries basically a mixture of one or the, or like small percentage of capitalism, a small percentage of socialism? Like they are a mixture. There is no, I've said this on the show, there is no such thing as 100% socialist or capitalist economy. Like they're all a mixture. Now it's just a matter of like, okay, what percentage is more capitalist, which ones are more socialist, because and that's the thing, like both sides almost have to agree that if every country is a mixture of both and there is no 100% one or the other, then it means that there's some pros and cons for both of them, that they're, because then why would every country adopt some aspects of both? It's because there's certain things that work on from both. I mean, I can see, government's obviously a problem. You give them a bunch of taxpayer money and you say, hey, like, do good things with this. Like, of course, we know politicians are corrupt and they're pieces of crap. That's not going to happen. I mean, they're all multimillionaires and they're going to spend money on wars that we don't want to be in, and give huge contracts to military companies and bomb companies who are overpricing their products. But in the other hand, like I said before, there's also issues with capitalism. So in regards to companies only caring about, and especially this is a big problem with companies going public, because the thing about companies that are private and aren't public companies, they care about the long-term effects of the business. They care about, like, okay, if I have a small coffee shop, like if I own it, I was handed down the business from my father and he was handed down from his father. It's like, we care about this thing sticking around. So we're not going to do anything that's going to kill its reputation or hurt its reputation, because we have some pride in this business. Once a business goes public, then it's owned by the shareholders and they care about quarterly gains. They don't give a shit how you do it. They just care about quarterly gains. So that means you're going to make, instead of making long-term decisions on your business, like make decisions on, like, okay, where we're going to be in the next 5 years, or we're going to be in the next 10 years. They're making short-term decisions. So they're thinking like, okay, how do we make more money this quarter? Oh yeah, let's dispose of that shit in the stream behind the business, because it's too expensive to do it some other way. Or like GM, I've used this example before. When GM knew that they had a ignition problem with their cars that was causing the cars to turn off, and they're like, fuck it, we don't want to recall it because it's too expensive, so let's just ignore it and then hope that it's not too bad. And that's what they did. And I think, I mean, there's only a handful of accidents, but a couple people died. And it's like, if you're one of those people who die, or one of those families that lost a loved one, you're going to think to yourself, like, you motherfuckers cared more about making profit than you cared about possibly losing a loved one. And now my loved one isn't around, all because you guys made a business decision, and that's hard to swallow. That's, and you can't say that that's not motivated by some type of capitalism, because you just look at things. And don't get me wrong, like I see Hotep's perspective, where he's like, you can't have some morals and be a capitalist. You can, but
I thought Hotep made some good points about, you brought up the fact that DuPont poisoned people with Teflon. And he made a point to say that, well, part of the reason why DuPont got so big is because they lobbied the government to outlaw hemp. And I think a big problem that we have is our government loves to prop up the monopolies. I mean, if DuPont weren't allowed to get so big, if they decided to put Teflon in their pans, if they were just a small company, it would have only affected a small portion of people. But
yeah, okay. So let's expand on this, because this is kind of interesting in regards to like the two sides of the debate. I do remember him saying that, and I think he made a really good point, and I think you're making a really good point too. But couldn't you make the argument that the reason why DuPont got so big wasn't only, like, if you're making good products, if capitalism is filtering out the shitty companies, and if you make good products that people like, you're going to grow and keep getting bigger, then you could grow and keep getting bigger just based on good products. Then eventually, when you're ginormous because of the good things of capitalism, of you putting out good products that people like, eventually you get so big that you say, hey, you know what? Like, hey, we can save some money if we do this. We save some money if we do that. So couldn't they end up in this exact same position, even if the government had no interaction in it? Because if they're putting out, good technology, good products that people like, you could still get to that point even if the government doesn't help.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a chance for that, but I think one argument you could say is, if there had been more competition, they wouldn't have been able to get that big, or people would have went elsewhere if they would have had more choices. Kind of like how, Big Pharma is allowed to run ads on every single commercial, but if I want to create some natural drug, I'm not allowed to really advertise that. And
CBD.
Exactly. So, but at the end of the day, I don't think there should be, the libertarian approach of zero regulation, because I don't think somebody should just be allowed to put a bunch of, toxins and poisons in food and just push it out.
But on the other side of that, though, a lot of this is built into the model when they come out with a product. Just like in construction, when a big project happens, there is an acceptable amount of loss of life, and that's built into that and the insurance for that. So let's just say you come out with a product, use Teflon for example, like the pots and pans. You came out with this product, you know the numbers because you got the bean counters doing their thing. You know you're going to make 200 billion, right? What are the lawsuits that are going to come off the back end of that, of people that have problems or maybe die from your product, or you get sued? If it's 100 billion, doesn't matter. You made 100 billion. So it's built into the model. There's always an acceptable amount of loss of life in anything, and especially in automobiles.
Well, even the competition thing, right? So I've heard that debate, like, okay, well, if there's enough competition, they wouldn't be that big. But you could have as much competition as you want. Eventually, there's going to be one company that does it better than others, and that's the one that everybody's going to go to. So you're never going to stop. Like, that's the whole point of competition, in a lot of
Look at a company
capitalist.
like Blockbuster.
What's that?
I mean, look at a company like Blockbuster. They were the biggest around, and nobody thought anybody would ever take over them. And then Netflix came along. So, but I mean, I definitely see your point too.
But was the government involved in propping something up with that to bring something in to eliminate something out? I think a lot of, like what you were talking with the DuPont thing, I don't know a whole lot about that company other than what I watched on the Francis Richard Connolly 3.5 hour thing where he talks a little bit about that. But I mean, when you have a government that's, if you're paying these politicians exorbitant amounts of money, then they're regulating your competition and not you. I mean, that's a problem too.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think one of the biggest deals is just getting money out of politics, which is a lot easier said than done.
But that's kind of Zach's point, and I think Hotep and some of the libertarians' perspective and capitalist perspective is that that's exactly what happens. A company gets big, and then they create regulations or promote regulations or lobby for regulations that hurt their competition and not them. So they use basically the government as another way of creating a monopoly. I guess the only counter argument is the fact that I don't think that there would be a end to monopolies even if there wasn't government. Like, there would still be a chance. I don't think that the monopoly could last forever. Like you said, Blockbuster is a perfect example. It seemed like they had a monopoly, and then a better idea comes around eventually. But that's also the argument for capitalism, is that even if there is a monopoly, eventually a bigger company or a better idea will come and take that one out. And then you don't need government to really control things, because these things will happen organically. Unfortunately, there's never been a perfect example of these things to know that that's for sure what would happen, that a Blockbuster would come with no government help.
Yeah.
They are big, they have monopoly. Then Netflix, just another company with a better idea, comes around and can see the future, a better vision. They end up taking over because Blockbuster didn't.
Well, like I don't think Big Pharma would be near as big if natural medicine wasn't so suppressed, and
Yeah, but so okay, so this is that's a really good point. So do you think that if there was, and we're not picking on you, Zach, I just like having these.
Oh no, I like the back and forth. I mean,
Yeah.
like you, Ricky. I'm always open to changing my mind on things.
So if Big Pharma, right? So the commercials on TV, like we talked about, there's no, who would stop them from spending that much money on commercials? Who would stop them from saying, hey, Google, YouTube, hey, how about you guys? We give you some money, we give you a cut of our profits, and you guys just suppress any of the natural remedies and any of that stuff. Make sure that our chemical products come up first when people are searching for medicines for aches and pains or whatever it may be. Couldn't a lot of this stuff happen even without government?
Well, I would say yes, but at the same time, a lot of the natural medicines, they're not just suppressed; they're straight up outlawed. So people are not, they can't even, they're afraid to even research it because it has the term illegal on it. Or people will die in a car crash or a gunshot wound, and they'll have kratom in their system, and they'll write down that as the cause of death.
Yeah, well, you saw that when Kratom was getting really popular. I did that show with Chris Bell in regards to his documentary A Leap of Faith, and they were basically, what a surprise, you don't see any more stories in the news about Kratom. But when Kratom was getting really popular and everybody was talking about it, all of a sudden you start seeing these news stories pop up, death possibly linked to Kratom, this and that. And it's like, what happened to all that? It's obvious that that there is some issues in regards to natural
It
remedies.
also doesn't help that a lot of our taxpayer money goes straight to these big pharma corporations to develop vaccines and other pharmaceuticals. That doesn't happen with any natural herbal or vitamin company out there.
Yeah.
Well, they won't let it. The kratom was a way to help alleviate some of the withdrawal symptoms of opioid addiction or heroin addiction, right? And so what
Depression,
yeah, what
anxiety, it helped with so many things.
but what I mean, those are all drugs that are pharmaceutical, right? From any of your SSRIs that deal with depression and all of that, anxiety, and then also too the Suboxone, which is what they put heroin addicts on to get them off of heroin, which is just getting them onto another version of heroin.
They want you off your drugs and on their drugs. Yeah. It's a huge issue. I mean, the kratom thing. Look at just weed, cannabis, hemp. The fact that forever that was demonized, and now in Massachusetts you can go around every corner and buy it legally.
You have people that know that it would help them medically, and know it's probably better than the pharmaceutical that they're taking, but they won't even touch it because it's illegal where they're at. Or
I was hooked on pills for 7 years, and I used edible marijuana to get off of them. And I weaned all the way down, and I knew that I was going to be going through some sort of withdrawals. So in order to go full bore with it, I weaned down, went half, and then I just went off of it and started taking edibles to I still felt some of it, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And they don't want you to know that it's got a lot of different uses for it. Marijuana in itself, that plant, should be a commodity like corn because of all the different uses that it has.
Well, hemp, the first American flag was made out of hemp. Henry Ford made fenders out of hemp. I think there's an old picture or video of like Henry Ford hitting these hemp fenders with a hammer. It's like they made clothes, rope. All this stuff. It was a magical plant that you could use for so many different things and could be easily grown at home. But that's the thing. Like, obviously they suppress this stuff because it cut into the profits of all these other things. I haven't watched a documentary in a long time, but years ago I had Adam Scorgi on, who did The Union. I forget what the subtitle is, like the business behind getting high or something like that. He also did The Culture High, or The Culture. Yeah, was it called The Culture High? They had a bunch of people in there, like Snoop Dogg was in there, Joe Rogan, a bunch of people, and it's about like the war on drugs. But this war on drugs, it's really like the war between the people wanting the freedom to do what the fuck they want against the government, who decides like, no, we're gonna pick and choose which drugs you can do. Because like I always say, I can go to a liquor store around any corner and buy 2 handles of vodka and drink myself to death, and nobody gives a shit. Nobody says like, let's ban alcohol because of that. And yet, if you get harmed with kratom, weed, whatever, they'll use that as propaganda to be like, oh, see, we told you this stuff's bad. So it's but that's the thing. Like, these are conversations before 2020. Everybody would say, oh yeah, you're right. Like, they don't really give a shit about your well-being or whatever. And then all of a sudden 2020 came around, and everybody had this illusion that now the government gives a shit about like us, like all the decisions, all the lockdowns, all the regulations, all the stuff was because they actually are trying to protect us. It's silly. People are delusional.
Yeah, well, like in Jackson, Mississippi right now, because their water system wasn't prepared for the winter weather, like over 160,000 people don't have clean water right now. Yeah, it's just like Flint 2.0. And then you have people like Bill Gates pretending that they care about us, but don't want to do anything about all the water crises around. Like, I'm not even a big fan of him, but I know Will Smith's son, Jaden Smith, he went down to Flint and brung a portable water purifier down there that delivered water to people. And of course, that doesn't help, people's faucets, but, why couldn't Bill Gates do something like that? He doesn't, because obviously he doesn't care, or there's not a financial incentive to it. And I mean, some people could argue, well, you can only do so much if, the water system is controlled by the government, but he has enough money where he could lobby people, he could have people peacefully protest around the government, push them to do something good. But, obviously that's not his intentions.
Oh, he's got the opposite intentions. I mean, if you listen to everything.
Hmm.
What was it, 500 million? Is that what we're aiming for?
What's that? Oh, the total people?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah.
there's such a great documentary. I'll try to look it up while we're chatting on the Georgia Guidestones. And at the end of it, they actually have a pretty good idea on who they think was behind it. I know there's like a lot of hunches.
I
And,
know Jamie Deluxe is a good video on.
oh, Jamie did?
Yeah.
Dude, that dude amazes me. He does everything on his iPhone. Like all his videos, everything on his literally.
You would never know.
No, he records everything, edits everything, and he's hilarious.
Animations.
Yeah, I mean he's wild. He's such a cool dude. I've been talking back and forth to him forever. He's like one of those guests that I've been wanting to get on and kind of chit chat with, just because he seems like a fun dude to kind of bullshit with. You could talk to him about a bunch of different stuff. I know he's into music and he still plays in a band, I believe. Another one who just got kicked off YouTube, right? Jamie Deluxe.
Yeah.
It's wild. You want to get in here?
Oh, sorry, me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I live in Sweden, so I don't know about everything you talk about, but I have two uncles who lives in Dallas, Texas. So when I was younger, I used to go there, but I came in a bit late, but I heard some about was it the healthcare system you were talking? Because I've been wondering with the US, because in Sweden, that's one part we have pretty good, but when you see the US, we always think that maybe doesn't everyone want to have, better healthcare, or is it, can everyone get, like, if you get cancer, or do you need to actually be rich, or is it more like a myth, or is it different states, or how does it work, the healthcare system?
Well, you can go to good doctors and get good care. You'll just be in good debt for a long time.
Okay.
My wife, she has, just the other day she was talking about this, how she still has like this Bay State, which is like a local hospital. She still has this bill that's been lingering around, and she owes them like all this money. And she's like, I'm like, oh, you're still paying that thing? She's like, yeah, I just send them a little bit of money from month to month. They don't care as long as I keep sending them something, And it's like some ridiculous, I forget what it was even for. It was like something that she thought the insurance covered. They said it covered. And then like there's some issues with the insurance. And it's like one little fuck up like that. And all of a sudden you have this debt that's just lingering around, following you around everywhere. As I'm sure you guys know, I was born in Portugal, and like Portugal, you look at most of Western Europe, obviously Sweden and some of the other countries nearby, they all have, universal healthcare. And is there flaws to it? Yeah, but I mean, we could put all the flaws side by side. I mean, there's flaws with both. And one thing that I've been hearing a lot lately, and this is something I didn't even think about, and you can tell me if it's like that in Sweden, where a lot of the arguments in America to not have universal health care were the same arguments they made in other countries before they had universal health care. It's the same. It's like they're just hearing the same thing. It's like, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, like all the scaremongering. And then eventually they have, and they're like, okay, this is not perfect, but it's a better system. I mean, if we went over to Canada right now, I went to Canada for a weekend getaway, or even just for a day trip, and I drove how many hours it is from Massachusetts to Canada, and I broke my leg, they would just look at me, give me the x-rays, take care of me, and I get to come back to the US, and I don't have to do a damn thing. I don't owe them anything. I don't do, none of that. Now, you know, people say that America, we have the best doctors. A lot of that is probably because everything's so damn fucking expensive here, and like the medical industry is such a for-profit industry that you are going to get like these amazing doctors and these amazing minds, because as you know, like if the wages are higher, chances are you're going to get brighter people who are doing it, you know, and brighter minds pursuing you know, that career where, you know, we always talk about how like teachers, you know, a lot of our teachers in America suck. A lot of it is because they don't get paid enough. You know, some of our police officers suck. That's also because they don't get paid enough. I mean, you can make the argument that like cops really don't get paid that much. You know, at least in Massachusetts, they don't get paid that much in regards to like if I'm at a mall and there's, you know, and I don't know who would be in a mall at 2021, but if I was at a mall and I hear gunshots, I get to go in the opposite direction, and that poor police officer making whatever, you know, $20 a hour or whatever he's making has to go in the direction of those gunshots. You know, it's just, to me, it doesn't seem like a lot. Like in Massachusetts, we had a issue some years ago in regards to hiring flagmen. So flagmen were like for construction jobs, instead of having a police officer telling the traffic where to go, you would have these flagmen where they would hold these signs to say stop or go or whatever. And it was replacing police officers, and police officers were getting rip shit about it because those details is where they make like time and a half or whatever their wages are on those details. It's like overtime. So they make you can make a lot of money if you work a lot of details. So these guys were really pissed that they, you know, that opportunity was being taken away from them. And a lot of even friends of mine are like, oh, fucking cops, like what are they getting so upset about? They make so much money on those details when they're doing just traffic stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, their regular wage sucks. I'm like, if a lot of these guys, if it wasn't for the opportunity of doing overtime, they wouldn't even be doing it because they couldn't afford to raise a family on what they, you know, what they make. Or you could get a job that's less dangerous, you know, that making the same somewhere else. So it's you know, it is one of those things where it's interesting because in Europe they've kind of accepted like, okay, this isn't perfect, but it's better. And in America, we're like, okay, this isn't perfect, but it's better than what they're doing. And I'm like, well, I don't know which one's, they're both not perfect, but which one's better, right?
Well, I don't like that our medical or our healthcare is attached to our wages or attached to our employment, because what we just saw recently, you know, how many people lost their healthcare because they lost their job, you know, because of the government, because they shut everything down. And so, you know, it makes a lot of sense to do that. And the government can afford to do it because, you know, we're on the fiat currency system. All they do is create money into existence. It's not backed by anything anymore, you know, and our taxes don't make their way back around to fund anything, you know, like everybody thinks, oh, well, our tax dollars are making going all the way back around and it's going to pay for this. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work like that at all.
Well, see, in an ideal world, I do think we need Medicare for all. You know, you hear stories all the time about how somebody calls the ambulance because, you know, they have an accident or something, and then they get there and they're like, no, I don't want to get on the ambulance because they know it's going to put them in debt just to get on it. But my problem is, I don't think our government has shown that they have a good moral compass. And I feel like at this point in the direction that we're heading, if they introduce Medicare for all, even if it's not this way at first, it will eventually be conditional, which means, oh, you can have health insurance, but you need to make sure you get this vaccine. Or, oh, you can have health insurance, but we need you to wear this implantable or this watch that'll track your health at all times. So you use that data.
Yeah.
And that is a scary state of healthcare.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just think about this too. Now, all of the like the Justice Democrats, like Ro Khanna and all of those AOC, they all ran on the platform of Medicare for all, right? And then when it came time to force the vote, which Jimmy Dore's been talking about, you know, talking about a lot. I don't know if anybody follows Jimmy Dore.
Yeah.
He's been on a show. He's been on like years ago. He was on. I think he was still working for TYT when he was on.
Yeah. And so, I mean, all of that, you know, they just keep like everything that they got voted in for, they've really just kind of abandoned. and they'll go on Twitter and they'll make everybody think that, oh yeah, they'll talk bad about, yeah, this is horrible, this is a bad idea, what, this and that. But when it comes time to vote for things, or they could have forced the vote, which would have put it would have brought the vote to a floor, and then that way we could have all seen who said no against it and kind of put them on notice, right? But they didn't do that. They had the power to do it, and they didn't. And especially since it's 70% accepted across the board in the population, both Democratic and Republican, right?
Well, I
So
mean,
70% of the people think it's a good idea.
well, I mean, it's like you think if they want to propagate this is such a terrible pandemic, now would be theoretically the best time to have it.
And then
you can find a video from the early 90s of Nancy Pelosi saying that she wants single payer. And so in my mind, it's like AOC is just Nancy Pelosi in training. And we're going to be seeing Nancy Pelosi we're going to be seeing AOC when she's 80 years old and shriveled up, doing the same thing.
And then Biden's what's his solution to that is subsidizing Cobra, which is the worst idea that you can do, because I don't know if any of you have ever been on Cobra before, but it's literally, so when you lose your health insurance and you go on Cobra, it's like $1,200 a month just for that healthcare, right? To be covered in whatever you're doing, like if you're on Kaiser, if you're on Sutter, if it like whatever your HMO is, it allows you to be covered, but it's at $1,200 a month. Now that's pretty expensive, and that's per person. So if you've got like a family, are you going to pay for that? So it's kind of like the worst thing that he's talking about subsidizing, which is going to be great for the healthcare or for the insurance companies, because now they're going to get $1,200 per person, but it's going to be horrible for the people that are on it. So
and they're not going to get the best care. I mean, like Ricky said, a lot of people say that we have the best doctors in the world. Well, yeah, you can go have that top care if you can afford it, or have the right insurance. But more than
until those doctors get debunked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is we have the best doctors as long as you're talking about like surgeries and stuff like that. But I don't know if any of you guys heard the episode I did with Jim Abrams, or you probably heard me talk about it because I'm constantly talking about that episode and that whole situation. But he's the filmmaker of Naked Gun, had a son that was having violent seizures, had access to all the best doctors. He was loaded with money, had tons of resources, so he could go see all the best doctors, go to the best hospitals, and the only solutions they had were pharmaceutical and surgery. And come to find out, he ends up curing his kid of these seizures using the ketogenic diet, so dietary therapy. So it's an example of how, like, okay, we have the best doctors, but there's also limits to that, because when
none of them even really learn about nutrition.
They don't, I've had so many doctors on the show, and they all say the same thing. It's like 1 day or 1 week of nutritional learning, which is hilarious, because it's like we all know, like, if we eat better, that means that we're healthier. And if we eat like shit, then our health goes to shit. So why wouldn't that be a topic you want to focus more on if you're getting into a career that pursues helping people's health? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So in Sweden, what's the lockdown like right now? Are you guys still in a lockdown? Or are you guys?
Well, they haven't been locked down.
No, but it is a bit strange. Right.
But they suggested it, right? It's like a suggestion of a lockdown, or like,
yeah.
We're not.
I think it's starting to get. I thought of this the other day. In some ways, I think it's worse than other places, because everyone thinks it is quite good, but they keep like sneaking very slowly in more and more stuff and restrictions. And it's starting to feel like I don't know, I think people are so used to, I don't know, maybe because we never had war or that much trouble here in Sweden, because people will do mostly anything the government says. I was skeptical from the beginning, and I thought, this would be one of the worst countries if they would say anything. But but Swedes were really proud that they didn't lock down or anything. But they started really late in trying to get everyone to wear masks. So it didn't really work, but and they sort of jumped from mask doesn't work, you don't need it, to suddenly, yes, on the radio and stuff, there are some people who doesn't wear mask, and why? So it like turned to really simple propaganda almost, and it's still like that. So, but it's not lockdown, but they try to sort of shame people a little bit and keep repeating on the radio like it's really serious, but still people don't. It's only at some places they're starting to destroy like businesses. You can't be more than 8 people and stuff, but you can in some places. You can be a lot of people. Maybe it's the same in the US. I don't know.
They're
But
still doing that now. Like they're a little late to the party.
yeah, they they have done it for a while, but they try to, like, I don't know if they think people doesn't take it serious. They've done one thing that's really bad. They changed the law, like a temporary law. That's very unusual for, I think, Sweden, probably most places, but that's never a good sign, I think. But the most scary part for me is that no one is reacting or getting used to. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I told my dad that, there's going to be like a health passport eventually. That was the thing I thought from the beginning, but now I told him, because it's not impossible, but he said, no, that's not going to happen here. And then it happens, and they just suddenly started talking about almost forcing people that everyone must have it, and all those things that I've been talking to friends, and everyone says it's never going to happen. But after a short while, most people are almost accepting it. I don't see anyone saying anything about it. A few people. Yeah,
Has there been like a vaccine rollout in there, or a push for vaccinations?
It's extreme now. I mean, it's for me, it's like a strange movie. It's insane. But most people, I guess, I think vaccines are like a super religion in Sweden. I haven't thought about it before, but it's like science and trusting the people and everything.
World.
Sorry?
I said that's becoming the religion of the world, science.
Yeah, but yeah, but still, I didn't know it was this extreme here, because it's almost like the government doesn't have to do anything. It's just the people. You can see what people write. People who have good lives say things like, you shouldn't be allowed to go to the hospital, and all this crazy stuff that I see no reason for people to be that extreme. And it's extremely strange, actually. So I'm not sure.
Well, that's a shame. I mean, because it just goes to show that you can't read the headlines. Over here, anything I heard about Sweden was, oh, there's the freest. They never lock down. Everything's all fine and dandy. But
yeah,
it's not always that simple.
No, I don't think. And I mean, people don't agree with me. I might see it a bit darker, but I noticed, like, from the beginning, I was really trying to watch everything, and most of the things that I suspected turn out to be sort of true. But every time, people tell you you're crazy and that can't be. And then after a while, I was crazy just saying that the mRNA vaccine, that it didn't include any, actual virus. And then it became allowed to say that, and it wasn't that crazy. And it's been like that with everything almost. You can only say it after
it's obvious.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's strange. It's just, I don't know. I think it's strange that people have accepted that it might, it went sort of in a week that we might, not only the health passport thing, but that might not be able to, like, shop food and stuff. I thought that part would be like extreme outrage.
Well, I have a theory about that.
Yeah.
Hey guys, my name's Patrick. I'm in Chicago. My theory about that is basically kind of part of Operation Mockingbird, but basically I feel like the media has been flooded with superhero movies and cop shows, hospital shows, stuff like that, to kind of program everyone into like when the time comes that they too can be a superhero by enforcing, you know, the rule of the state. And that's why, and like, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like pretty blatant around here. There's signs everywhere like, be a superhero, wear a mask. It's like, I wonder why everybody is so like obsessed with being a superhero after like the past 15 years of like 3 times annual Marvel movies.
Yeah, they definitely tried to push the narrative that all the frontline workers and nurses were heroes, you know.
Dude,
Speaking of frontline, did you know her name's Simone Gold? The one lady that was the standout on the frontline doctors. Remember when Del Bigtree was talking about that? They were at the Capitol, and she was the woman that was the
Demon
centerpiece of it.
was that the demon sperm lady?
I don't know if it's demon sperm or not, but I would listen to her. Her name's Simone
I
Gold.
don't know if it was demon sperm. I can't tell the difference between the sperms either.
Yeah, it wasn't my sperm. So I mean, she's a doctor, a licensed physician, right? And she was coming out against all this stuff, and she's also a lawyer. So what I didn't understand is like, why would somebody go through all of that training and all of that schooling to turn around and nuke their own career if they didn't really believe in what they were saying? You know, and she was saying a lot of good stuff.
There was a London Real episode, and I don't know if any of you guys caught this, with Dr. Buttar, and they got 100+ doctors on a Zoom call. Okay, it was during the lockdown, and this is when London Real was having issues with YouTube. So this was, I believe, only put on their platform, LondonReal.tv, and they had 100 doctors, all with their names and faces on the call. And Dr. Buttar would say things, and Brian Rose, the host of London Real, would be like, "How many of you doctors agree?" You know, and they would all raise their hand. So, I mean, think about how many doctors put their careers on the line. How many doctors, like when people pigeonhole a you know, a specific doctor that's outspoken and says, "Oh, they're pseudoscience, they're crazy, this and that." It's like, it's already bad enough that you're telling somebody who studies medicine, who has a PhD, who went to college, that their opinion doesn't matter for some reason. But how do you justify that in regards to 100 doctors? Are they all fucking crazy? You know, so the thing is, when this happens with JFK, this happens with 9/11, this happens with every single conspiracy theory. You know, OKC, people are always like, "Oh, if there was a conspiracy, somebody would have said something." And then I always say, they did. It just, their voices are suppressed. I mean, you look at 9/11, there's plenty of whistleblowers. You look at, you know, JFK, you look at, so I mean, you look at every major event, OKC, and you see it now with the COVID thing. Every you know, the nurse I just had on my show, Erin Marie, you look at Dr. Scott Jensen, you look at so many different people, but you know, a lot of the people Del Bigtree's interviewed, and so many of these people are outspoken. So many of these people are whistleblowers, for lack of a better term, but yet the average person only knows one doctor, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Bill Gates. You know, it's like those are the only people that they know. Like, they don't even know who Dr. Scott Jensen is. They don't even know who Aaron is. They don't know you know, all these people.
Cory Booker, the ivermectin guy.
Yep. And then there's the Pfizer employee, the ex-Pfizer employee. He's like way up there in Pfizer, Dr. Yadin. I could only find his video now on BitChute. Yeah, he's another guy who was talking about it, and like, you can't find that video. I just shared the video of the death of the 39-year-old mother who 4 days after getting her second dose of the Moderna vaccine passed away. It was the video was by a local news station, okay, local news station, not Alex Jones or whatever, and yet that video is disappeared. The only place I could find it is where I find Alex Jones videos on band.video. So it's like, this was by a local news station. Just like, if you're suppressing this information, okay, then there's a reason why you're trying so hard to make sure that people don't even know that there's a slight threat to it. Now, you know, this whole idea of like having to get a vaccine to travel and stuff like that, there is some positive perspective to all this. So if we can slowly start opening the world up completely and get out of a state of emergency, they can't force you to get a vaccine that's not FDA approved. Now, the only way they can push this vaccine on us is because we're in a state of emergency, because it's not an FDA approved vaccine. So if we can get rid of the state of emergency and slowly open things up, the vaccine companies would have to, it would take years, you know, at least a couple years to go through the steps to get it FDA approved, then go through this whole process of force feeding us all this positive information on why we should get it. But I mean, even that story and talking about like force feeding positive information, even that story about that mother Cassidy, I forget what her last name is, that passed away at 39. Her father in the video says, "I'm still gonna get my vaccine."
That blew my mind.
Didn't that blow your fucking mind? He's like, because I'm high risk. I'm like, and I keep saying this to people, the virus has proven it. As you go up with age, the chances of you actually dying from it, if you believe, and we can go into all the details on like how the PCR test is bullshit because they're using too many cycles, and how the rapid test gives false positives, and all the misrepresenting of deaths. Even if you take in consideration that they're not lying to you and the numbers are accurate, the percentage of people who are dying are all old and have multiple issues, and the higher you go with age, the more likely you are of dying from it, even using their bullshit numbers. Now, if that's true, like I keep telling people, there's a chance, okay, if the virus is dangerous, there's a chance if you're old, okay, it could be dangerous to you, okay, I get that aspect of it, okay. But when young people are getting the vaccine, and there's like literally no evidence that it's lethal to the average person, you have to come to the conclusion that you have a virus that is dangerous to old people and unhealthy people. Then you have a vaccine that can actually hurt young and healthy people. So like, what's more of a threat to the population? Like something that can harm unhealthy and old people, which you can make the argument so can just about anything, the flu, the cold, whatever, or the vaccine that they're force feeding the people that are hurting healthy people. Like, so to me, it doesn't, like, one hurts, there's a potential of hurting healthy people, one there's a potential of hurting unhealthy old people. And yet, like, people are still like, yeah, I still want to take my chances and get the vaccine. I'm like, how unconfident are you about your health? Like, I would be like, yo, you know what? Let me just stock up on some vitamin D, some vitamin C, get some sun. Maybe I should change my lifestyle, get some exercise. And that way, if I get sick, I'm ready to fight this virus. Instead, people are like, no, get me that vaccine and also supersize my burger. Like, I mean, that's what's going on. People are just like, give me the vaccine and I can just keep being a slob and not eat anything with any nutritional value, not exercise, you know, order takeout and sit in front of a screen all day. It makes no sense. Like this idea that the news wasn't having, why didn't they have fitness trainers, nutritionists, all these people interviewed over and over again? We have a virus that's killing unhealthy people. Why aren't you constantly doing segments on how do we improve our health? Makes perfect sense. No, they're like, no, let's fuck that segment. Let's just keep focusing on how many deaths, how many cases. Oh, the deaths are going down. Let's just focus on cases because that's a larger number, and we can keep scaring people. Large numbers scare people. What the fuck is a case even mean? If you test positive for something, like I just ran on my cousin like a couple days ago, and he's usually every Christmas we get together at his house. This year we didn't. Well, we didn't because he went to go get surgery on his hand or something like that. They tested him, and he tested positive for corona. So he's like for COVID, and so he takes I think he took a test, and they had him do the rapid test after. He tested positive again, and then they're like, yeah, you're gonna have to like isolate yourself at home. He's like, dude, Christmas is like right around the corner. What, you're gonna tell me to cancel Christmas? So his wife and some of the family are like, they find out he tests positive. He's like, dude, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to cancel Christmas. and he's like completely fine. You know, he's completely fine, has no symptoms, and he's just like, this is fucking so ridiculous that I am considered a sick person even though I have zero symptoms. Like, this is the first time that somebody who doesn't have symptoms can be considered sick. I mean, imagine before 2020, if you went to your doctor like, hey, I'm sick, what's your symptoms? I don't know, I feel fine, but I'm telling you I'm sick. And then they're like, oh, okay, like you don't seem sick, get the fuck out of my office. Let me actually waste my time taking care of people who actually have symptoms. You know, that's same thing with like people who were sick prior to 2020. if in construction, if you stayed home and you weren't dying, like you'd be called a pussy. Like you'd be like, no, like you had a runny nose and you called out of work. We needed you, man. What the fuck were you doing? Like
It's funny. Like one of the most famous basketball games of all time is called the flu game, where Michael Jordan played with the flu.
yeah. How dare you? No, now we look at him like he's a murderer that was spreading viruses that could kill people. Whose grandmother? Let's do some contact tracing and find out whose grandmother died soon after that game because he spread the flu all over that place. Like Patrick's from Chicago. He'd probably disagree with Jordan being a murderer. But that's how ridiculous it is. That's how silly this all is. Like why is music playing again? You guys hear that?
And it was funny under Ricky Rants, he was talking about the polio vaccine, about how people argue if that got eradicated or if it was already going down. Well, one thing you didn't mention was like 30% of the people that got it between like 1955 and 63, the vaccine was contaminated with the SV40, which is a simian virus, and a lot of people think that leads to some types of rare cancers. And apparently there's, if you Google that, there's some debate on whether that really causes cancer or not. But at the end of the day, they injected people with a contaminated vaccine.
Well, it's like that story about now it's been a while since I've read this information. You guys might remember which pharmaceutical company that contaminated AIDS stuff, and it got banned in the U.S. and they sent it over.
Bayer.
It was Bayer. Yes, I thought it might have been, but I didn't want to get sued by the wrong company, so I wanted to make sure. Yeah, it was Bayer, and I mean they knew that it was contaminated, and they're like, okay, well, just
France.
Yeah, they sent it off to the French. So it's wild, and they're basically criminals. I mean, there's evidence that they could care less about our well-being, and yet all of a sudden, and we make this joke over and over again. It's like big pharma is evil. Everybody agrees on that. They only care about pushing pills, and they don't care if there's side effects or whatever to their drugs. But all of a sudden, like we think that in regards to vaccines, like all of a sudden they're moral people and they're just trying to help us. I mean, the fact that anybody could argue that you're not a guinea pig if you're taking the vaccine is silly. I'm like, obviously there's no long-term studies, so you are a part of the study. And the thing is, when they do these studies, I mean, when you think of like typically when you do a study, you want healthy young people who have no pre-existing conditions, because you don't want those pre-existing conditions getting in the way of the study, so you don't want it to get in the way of something getting approved, and when really it wasn't the drug. So those are the type of people they usually do studies on. Now you're like, hey, we do the studies on healthy young people, but we think the people who should get the vaccine are old sick people. It's like, what does that tell you? That tells you that you're playing Russian roulette. I mean, you don't know if this is safe for these old people, and so you could be doing more harm than good. And the crazy thing is, like, everybody who died and even had a runny nose, they called it a COVID death. But anybody who dies after the vaccine, it's like, we have to do an autopsy. We need time. We're not sure. Not sure. It's like, wait, I don't get it. You're really quick to jump to conclusions that COVID was the leading cause of death. If they didn't get the vaccine. If they do get the vaccine, all of a sudden we have to do an autopsy. What the fuck? Why aren't we doing an autopsy for the COVID deaths? Why aren't we, figuring out if it really was the virus or not, that caused it?
Yeah, we had the most obvious before the vaccine before they started giving it to people. There were like a radio show about how to be not too alarmist about the vaccine. So they sort of got people used to it, seemed, before it happened. I saw in the US there were stories on CNN like, don't be alarmed if people start dying. I think it seemed sort of somewhat like that, but in a more calm way. But it seemed almost so obvious, like they were telling people already. I was surprised again that it seemed to work. I would hear people say privately, it's important not to be too alarmist about the vaccines and stuff. But I don't know why you would protect something like that. I mean, if it's not good, then it's not good. And also, oh, did you see, any of you see the video that came from Germany about the nursing home people with dementia?
Forcefully being injected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that didn't seem great, and it seems to be true. I mean,
Yeah,
So
I mean, I saw the footage.
yeah,
what
that's
happened?
not. They, it was a nursing home for dementia, and they, for some reason, brought like military men, and they, I think they, the, what do you call it, the family of the people, most of them had given them the right to do it, but they still forced them if they didn't want, and they
had
obviously
a
got,
military presence around.
yeah, and it was a whistleblower who filmed it. It's hard to see, you can't see that, but they had like double another person also confirming that and telling about it, and they're going to see if it's, what do you call it, murder or homicide. So it seems, and also it turned out that they, of course, when they died, they just took the PCR test and they said, oh, it's COVID. And that part, I thought, there was almost like a conspiracy before all this started. I thought myself that would be too simple. Are people really going to do that? But at least it happened there, and it seems to be, to be working. They just say it's COVID.
Well, CNN tried to get ahead of it again, but I just saw this like 2 days ago, an article saying that there was a Russian disinformation campaign about the vaccine.
Yeah.
Haven't heard that before.
It's always the Russians.
I know people are already like, oh yeah, well, I don't want that Sputnik vaccine. I'm like, well, so I don't understand the logic between why would their vaccine be any more dangerous or less dangerous than ours? Like how it's like even in the vaccine debate, the only time they'll ever say a vaccine is dangerous if it's coming from the Russians. All vaccines are good. Get a vaccine. It doesn't matter if it's Moderna or Pfizer. Just get a vaccine. Get the jab.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, the Russians have one? No. That one you should question. That one you should worry about. It's like, what the fuck, man? It's dude, we live in a wild world. In Sweden, it's funny. I get a lot of downloads in Sweden. Like Sweden,
Okay, yeah.
in the foreign countries, like they're always top, like one of the top foreign countries that I get. I mean, usually it's the English speaking countries, so it's Australia, UK, stuff like that, and then but Sweden, from the non English speaking countries, or the less English, I shouldn't say, because obviously you're speaking English, but the ones that it's not their primary language, it's always Sweden. Some years ago, I had this band, this metal band, or like a metal core band called Beyond All Recognition, and they're from Sweden. And I remember after I had them, like the downloads like blew up in Sweden, and I don't think they're together anymore. But this is, I don't know if it's still like this. I remember when I had them on the show, they were talking about going to college, and they're like, yeah, we're, a couple of us go to college. We don't have to pay for it. We just go, and they pay for like our room, and they pay for our food. And I'm like looking at them like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, everything's just paid for. And I'm like, that's wild.
College? Yeah, I'm not sure if that's true. Not for me at least, but no.
You guys, so how do you guys handle schools like that? Or
maybe it is sort of true.
You have to
no,
pay.
You're right. I mean, we're more or less
socialized college.
I mean, we take. I'm not sure. We most places you pay like a fee, but it maybe compared to other countries is almost like not paying. It's not. I'm not the best person to ask. I don't know, but
is it a flat fee, or is it like it doesn't matter what?
Yeah, I think it's like a flat fee decided, and
we're losing.
I'm not really sure, but it's a long time I went to. Oh, wait, is college the thing after
high school? Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure. I don't know. but at least it probably doesn't cost that much.
Yeah, yeah.
And most people then you take a loan like every year, and then you spend many years to pay that loan back. But it's not,
Yeah.
Sounds like America. Yeah,
yeah, but it's probably still,
cheaper.
yeah, and that loan can be quite much, I think. But no, that's not college. I don't know what's it called when you know, you go like a higher education.
Graduate
You
school.
take like a master degree. Is that college?
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
go to a university.
Okay. Yeah, university. Okay, then it's the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, America, it's a racket because it's like you get these kids to go to school. You tell them like, hey, you know, go pursue this, go, you know, whatever, and then it's like you can get paid this amount if you after you graduate, but and then you owe twice that amount. So it's like you're in debt for like ever, you know, and
Yeah.
so it's a
Yeah.
little bit of a racket. We, even doing construction, we you know, we used to do a lot of work on like local universities in the area, and they spend so much money on things that make the university look pretty, like cosmetically, things that make it look nice. Because when a
Wow.
parent goes there and you go look at the university with your child, if it looks really good, you're like, wow, what an amazing university, you know. But the problem is like you're investing in basically, you know, selling the image of the university. You're not investing in the education for the kids. So now you have tuitions go up to afford all this cosmetic bullshit, and then you know you have a kid, like I forget what percentage of Americans are doing a job that is not related to their degree. So in other words, you didn't go to the university for that reason, so you owe all that money and you're not reaping any of the rewards of going to the university. And that's quite common, you know. That's very common. So it's a I mean, I've heard, and I can't remember if it was Richard Wolf, Professor Richard Wolf, but I think it was him who said during an interview, he's a professor, I forget which university, but he's also a author and a scholar in Marxism and socialism. And he talks about how like back in the day, like we made, because high school wasn't always publicly, you know, paid for, you know, it wasn't it wasn't free. We made it free because we're like, hey, we've created a society where a high school diploma, without a high school diploma, it's just impossible to get a job. So it's only fair that as a society we help pay for that, you know, and we give it, so and then poor kids going to have the same chance as, you know, kids who come from money. And now people are making the argument that like a high school diploma is like the equivalent of like a college degree now. Like a high school diploma doesn't mean shit, and a going to a university is kind of like the standard on what people expect from, like, you know, when you're hiring somebody. It's like, wait, you didn't go to college, you know. But that's also deceiving too, because you look at like so many great minds and thinkers. I mean, a lot of people that I admire, like they're high school dropouts, they're college dropouts. They, you know, they're just not people who needed the university to get ahead. And I think a lot of it is because you realize like schooling, at least in America, isn't really about thinking. It's not, they're not trying to teach you how to think. They're trying to teach you what to think, and trying to mold you into like, okay, just be this machine that follows the rules and goes with the herd, and that's it. You know, it's not open-mindedness or people who are creative thinkers and or people who have good problem solving skills or any of that stuff. So it's yeah, it's weird from one country to another, the differences. But I'm sure like your school systems there are very similar to ours in regards to maybe not pushing creative thinking, but more about like, okay, just regurgitate this information, remember it, memorize it, and then just say it again. But I don't know. I mean, Sweden might be different in that aspect.
I don't know. I'm 42 now, so it's when I went to school, it was sort of like that. But I think at least people say that a lot of things has happened, and depending on what school. But yeah, probably somewhat the same. Um, but in the US, it seems like it must be something with the school that, at least that's the picture we have in Sweden of people from the US who come here, that everyone is very confident and also good at speaking, and you know, So there must be something in school that makes, I'm sure it's different, not the same everywhere, but still somewhat, like most people are like great speakers almost in the US. A lot of Swedes think that about people from the US.
That we're great speakers.
Yeah, more or less, you know.
And everybody from the US thinks the English are like that. We're like, we talk like shit, and the English are the ones, because even in
Yeah,
America,
but
if they have commercials for something expensive or elegant, they don't have an American accent. They have an English accent because
yeah, but I don't mean that it sounds nice or, but just, you know, good, I don't know how to say it, about speaking about yourself or getting you know, your mind across and explaining things.
Is that your
Yeah.
perspective of Americans who visit Sweden, or just like
Yeah,
seeing?
almost every time since I think, yeah, the Swedes, maybe it's like that everywhere in Europe, I don't know, but Swedes, that's almost, they love to speak to people from the US. It's very simple for people of the US, you know, to get jobs. But if you're from another country, you know, you have to learn Swedish and everything. But if you're from the US, you know, no one will let you ever learn Swedish. It never happens. Everyone wants to speak with you, and you know, they offered you a job almost immediately. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but sort of almost like
Move to
that.
Sweden.
Yeah,
I was just
yeah,
gonna
sure.
say,
Yeah,
let's get there before we need the vaccine to get there.
yeah. I'm trying to get my uncles. I mean, they going to try to move to Ethiopia before they are forced to. And I got my mom to go here just in time from Ethiopia to Sweden, because we had to try 3 times because they kept canceling all the flights. Because
So-
she's a little bit like me. She's a bit conspirative, maybe, that, you know, if you're from a country with war and stuff, that doesn't seem impossible that some things can happen in the future. So both of us were almost immediately like, we're never going to travel again. It's never going to happen. But yeah,
Now, did you were you born and raised in Sweden?
yeah. But
John,
See you guys. I got to cut out. Have a good one. Thanks for the
okay.
invite.
thanks
Bye.
for joining. So, and is your family also from Sweden? Everybody.
My mom, on my mom's side, they're Ethiopian, and my father is Swedish.
Oh, nice.
But I grew up with my mom and my sister. But
Have you been to Ethiopia?
yeah, maybe 7, 8 times. I'm not sure. Mostly the US, actually, because when my mom was really, she got us to travel a lot. I went to the US when I was 5 years old, and then 11 years old. I stayed for some time, and that's also one early memory that people. We stayed in the Bronx, and I met people at the playground, and a lot of people said the same thing, that, you know, US is so great because we have freedom. And I always remember that I didn't understand at the time what they meant, and maybe still don't understand, but it seemed like something a lot of people had learned, that they had freedom.
Well, it's weird because it's like, in a way, we still it's like deep rooted in our, you know, just our history. You know, this like, we fought for freedom. It's one of our values of our country. Like, other countries have culture, right? They like Portugal, Sweden, England. They have things that are part of their culture. You know, music, foods, the way they dress, all this stuff. One of the things that are part of American culture is that, like, that freedom, is that liberty, that understanding, like, you know, that government can be corrupt. Now, the problem with that is that we say these things, and then we're easily tricked into giving up those freedoms. You know, I know people that are very right wing that were so afraid of the virus that they're all for locking down and mandating masks and all this stuff. And I'm just like, goes against everything you believe in. Even if there is a virus, like, even if this thing is incredibly dangerous. Like, you know that if you give up those freedoms, you never get them back. And you know, I had during the height of the lockdown, I had a lot of people from overseas, people from England, people from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, South America contact me, and things were happening there, and they're like, "Oh, I don't see those things happening in America." And I'm like, "Oh, why not?" And they're like, "Oh, you guys just have this like revolutionary type of attitude where you just like you'll fight back." You know, like you were talking about in regard to Sweden, everybody just like the government says jump, and they say how high, right? They're like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll jump." You know, whatever they say, I'll do. There's that part of the population here, but there's also a very strong part of the population that says, no, fuck you. Like, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm gonna fight back. So there is a little bit of both. Like, I don't think one or the other like is the majority. You know, I think it's a balance of both. But I think the other side is super important because it kind of keeps everything in check, and it keeps people. It just you need them to be like, no, let's take a step back. Like, maybe this isn't for our health, maybe this isn't for our protection, you know. So it is deep rooted in our our history and our blood and all this stuff. I remember, I don't know if you know what like the "Don't Tread on Me" flag was. You know, like it's
No.
there's like a flag that says "Don't tread on me." It has like a snake on it, and like usually a lot of like people who would wave the Confederate flag or the "Don't tread on me" flag.
Oh, yeah.
People who have like you think like, oh, people who have guns and are cowboys
Yeah.
or into country music or whatever, Southern people. And then when the lockdown happened, my whole perspective on that flag changed. I'm like, oh no, these people that I used to think were like a little crazy, like we need these people because they're the ones who say like, hey, government, stay the fuck out of my life. Like, you're not
Yeah.
going to decide what's safe or not safe or what I can and cannot do. So it's just like,
I
yeah,
agree.
it is kind of, it's a part of our culture. I don't think it's, I mean, but there's also a huge percentage of Americans that are like, put on your, you know, like the public shaming, like you said, like, put on your mask, like, oh, your mask isn't on your nose, or, you know, this and that, you know, that type of stuff too. And I don't think I want to believe that some of them just truly got scared into believing that them harassing people or the public shaming is actually protecting people. I want to give it.
I guess so too. It must be. Yeah. I think too, most people doesn't want, to harm other people. Or, but the problem, I think, is that when you, like you simplify a group of people, like I notice in the media, when you talk about, the anti-vaxxers, and you decide what a large group of people exactly what they are thinking. And for instance, I noticed in Sweden, I thought it was extremely bad that they don't show any black people or darker people that are protesting around the world. And that seems to me that someone must have decided and, cut out, or it's almost like it's a decision not to, and only zoom in on people that, might look a little bit like skinheads or being really drunk. And so, and it seems to be working because they try to, associate, like right-wing extremists with anti-vaxxer, and but I'm not sure. I mean, no one is going to win. It won't help the average people.
Yeah, that's I agree with you. Like, you don't want to generalize. Just, I think even in America, there's so many different types of people in America. You go to the South, you go to the East, the West. You can't say like Americans are this, because it's like they might be that one thing in this one place, but you go somewhere else and they have different perspectives, different beliefs, slightly different culture, different foods. Even where I'm from in Portugal, we're from up north near Chaves, and like we eat slightly different foods than Southern Portuguese, than the islanders from the Azores. They're slightly different. So it's generalizing is hard. So when people talk about other countries, they talk about Sweden like, oh, the Swedish people are this. I think you could probably, I think in Sweden you say like in general most people will just listen to the government, but there probably is some, maybe it's a minority of people who will actually maybe question the government or fight back, or maybe have the same questions you have about what's going on.
Yeah, it must be. And I know there are some even doctors and what's that word for it? Immune, when you work with your immune system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
immunization.
Yeah, at least one, but it's not many, or probably they don't speak up. But it's surprisingly few. It is, but I noticed when you talk with friends and some people might agree with you, and so and most people say, oh, but we'll have to move out of the country, and sort of like a joke, but still. But of course, that won't really help anything. I mean, that won't change. I'm just, because it would be quite simple if just more people just said no, then what would happen? But instead, we're doing the opposite. We're sort of helping, and a lot of people that we have this show where you call into the radio, in the morning, and anyone can do it. There are quite some people that are, they want harder rules and it's just, it is a little bit insane, but I mean, I don't think people are evil, but maybe, I'm not sure what it is, but that's true. There are some people that call in that also have, similar thoughts, but for a long time, I mean, people saw me as really extreme because I'm not, super outspoken or anything, but this is the first time in my life that I mean, there's too many things that are wrong. And so on like Instagram, the social media thing that I have, I've just been posting a lot of, on the story with stuff then about everything. And, I know in the beginning, people were like looking at me a bit like I'm totally crazy, but now it's sort of, I think some people are sort of noticing that there are strange things going on, and but I think Sweden, maybe it's hard also to it's the anti-vax thing that no one wants to be connected to. And there was a big documentary that came out in the beginning of this that they actually went to the US and filmed like Del Bigtree and Andrew Wakefield. I don't know. And they made like an undercover documentary and became friends with all of them. And then sort of turned out, oh, no, we're actually pro-vax. And it was extremely like propaganda, like, but they still, it seemed to work on a lot of people because everyone talked, oh, the documentary is so good, and all these stupid anti-vax people, blah, blah, blah. So, but I think it's a shame that the vaccine thing is so sensitive here that you can't say anything. People say stuff like vaccines are just facts and you can't deny facts. And it doesn't make sense, because why would you have to forever be like in, what do you call it? Have to be in deaf to, have to like vaccines, whatever will come in the future. I don't think anyone actually believes that. But I was surprised how many would take these new vaccines. It would never, whatever whatever they would turn out to be, I think the people who would take it would still do it.
I think that generalizing is maybe one of their strongest tools, you know, in any direction they want to put it. Like, you know, all of these people are anti-vaxxers, all of these anti-vaxxers are Nazis, you know.
Yeah.
And they've already started so early with that in terms of the vaccine. They could have done anything, and they have already decided that vaccines are good. So, you know, that becomes the narrative of whatever vaccine were to come out.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most unscientific thing about all this that's really bothersome is like you said, Pat, like everybody's just decide that vaccines are good, and it's just like this general statement. It doesn't matter which type of vaccine, what kind of vaccine, who makes the vaccine. They've just brainwashed everybody believing that vaccines are good. That's it. And it's like, you know, like I know I get some listeners that are sick of me saying this, but it's like peanut butter. If I give every kid peanut butter, like some kids are going to die. Like you can't just say a general statement like vaccines are good, like that anybody who has a negative response to it or anybody who knows somebody who's had a negative response to it, it's all bullshit. And because you can't give everybody the same thing and have the exact same response to it. If you give everybody the exact same thing, the same cocktail of ingredients, somebody's going to have a negative response to it. So the argument is like, okay, how many people are going to have that negative response? And if that's the case, like if there is once we figure out that percentage, is getting the vaccine more dangerous or less dangerous than getting the virus? The problem is they don't even let you have that debate. It's like vaccines are good. You know, anybody who questions it is a crazy person, and they don't even let you know that there's a risk in getting the vaccine, and that's the problem.
Oh, dear.
Should we tell your you're on TV?
Ja, det är på tv nu. Oh, yeah.
I love hearing other languages.
Yeah. We just got news that. Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right.
No, I was just gonna say that, like, yeah, in regards to the whole "don't tread on me" thing, I was with you. I was like, you know, these hillbillies, like, you know, what are we even treading on? But they like created a "don't tread on me" person in me. Like, I had a line that I didn't even know that I had, and like now here I am. Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's just another, you know, another side of the whole generalization thing. It's like they want people to think that, you know, anybody who has like a different idea is, you know, pigeonholed into this group that they can then, you know, launch personal attacks on them without even, you know, thinking of people individually.
Yeah. Well, I think that the "don't tread on me" thing is interesting because I think some people, you know, when you look at like historians, when you look at people who study history, they see the just history repeat itself in regards to like, okay, we always have to be wary of the government. You give them too much power, they will abuse that power. And then, I mean, I think that's a good thing to always keep in the back of your mind and understand. Unfortunately, some of the "don't tread on me" people, I think, enjoyed that culture of like, you know, prior to all this, it was more like, oh, I like being the gun waving, you know, don't mess with me cowboy who like I have a pickup truck with big tires and don't tread on me flag. But you know, I don't like to generalize, and I think there's probably some people who really believed in what that stood for, and then there's people who just liked being like that, identifying with that, you know. So there's a little bit of both. So but yeah, I mean, now that flag and a lot of those people who were like the for freedom, small government people, those, you know, I look at them completely different now, where just like, yeah, I'm glad you guys exist because you're the ones who are fighting with me. You're the ones who are outspoken with me. You're the ones who have the balls to say something and not follow those ridiculous lines at the grocery store and not, you know, not wear a mask everywhere. And you see people in America wearing them in a car by yourself. Like, it makes no logical sense. Like, what, you're gonna get the car sick? I mean, what are you wearing a mask, but it just, there are people who, and this is a part of the school system where they teach you, follow the rules, don't get out of line, be a good person, be a good citizen, be a good civilian, just follow the rules, don't get in trouble, do your job, get along with people, and that's it. So I think some people who are, just following the rules, they're just good people who just, they were taught to, like, don't get in trouble. They weren't the kid who was getting in trouble in school. They were the kid who was doing all their homework and doing everything and doing what they were told and never getting in trouble, and always listen to authority. And now, you have authority telling you to do stuff. They're just listening, just like they've always had. But I think that's why the world needs rebels. They need the people who get in trouble in school. They need the people who drop out of school, who question things and don't accept the answers if they don't make sense, all that type of stuff. I do it with my own kids, where I'm just like, listen, question me. If I ask you to do something, if I can't explain why I want you to do something or not do something, maybe I should reevaluate what I have you doing or not doing. Maybe I should rethink it, but I should be able to defend it. And if I can't defend it, then, it's a longer conversation we have to have. But I'm completely open with my kids questioning authority. I much easier to have kids who don't question authority, and it's like, no, you listen to me every time I say do something, just do it, don't ask questions. But I don't think you're creating very interesting people. And if you don't have them question things a little bit, eventually they will be those people who are like, listen, I don't know why I'm wearing a mask in my car, but they tell me to wear a mask everywhere, so I'm doing it. And those are the type of people I want to raise. So, but I really appreciate. Hey, anything else you guys wanna chit chat about before we wrap it up?
I'm just
I
gonna
was just
say
gonna.
that.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, my girlfriend just told me that it was decided right now that they're gonna have this vaccine passport. It's been decided, and that only pregnant people and those allergic won't have to take the vaccine. My girlfriend is pregnant, so that's lucky. but they said at least until the spread is down. But I mean, it's extremely crazy. I wonder, when you look back in 20 years, I mean, how are they going to explain? It doesn't even make sense, because our, health, the person who's like our Fauci, he's like a smart guy, and everyone is really proud of him because of the lockdown thing. But he hasn't really explained either. It's just like, first, no, only the people who really need it. Then it just jumped to, no, it's better everyone. And then it, no one has explained why. I mean, this is not the way usually. Yeah, it's extremely strange.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is the biggest or not the biggest, but one argument I hear all the time is like, well, what, everyone is in on it then? Like, that can't possibly be true. But that's where the whole education system comes in, where they like breed generations of people who don't have to be in on it if they are just told that what they're doing is like the right thing. Were they in on it when doctors were like telling people smoking cigarettes were healthy, or like to eat fucking 13 servings of grain? Like, no, all these people were just doing their jobs and doing what they were taught. So it's like, it's a completely invalid argument that is completely convincing to most people.
That smoking example is actually a really, really good one, because you think about it, like, the whole world was smoking cigarettes. Everybody thought like, oh, this isn't that bad for you because a couple doctors said it wasn't. And it's like, what, like, you could make the same argument. It's like, what, everybody's in on it, like you said. But a lot of times when like you said, when you're molding people who just listen to authority, and if that authority says, hey, this is what's going on, they don't ask questions. And so that, I mean, the other thing too is like, there's a handful of people that are dictating, the information. You have the WHO, everybody's going to the WHO for information. You got Bill Gates and his hand all over the world, in every country, everywhere. So it's like everybody's getting the same information from the same people, that's why everybody's having the exact same reaction to it. And then it becomes a domino effect where if one country shuts down, you saw it in America in regards to businesses and sports. If one, sports league shuts down, then the other sports league goes, well, if they're shutting down, then I guess we should too, because then we don't look responsible. We look like we don't care about our employees. We look like we don't care about our athletes. So we have to do it. And then if they do it, then the next sports league says they do it. So it wasn't based on science. It wasn't. It was based on a few people do it, and then everybody else just follows the trend. And it's the same thing with the countries. Everybody's like, okay, there's some, even if countries were like, but I'm hearing stuff about these tests, I'm hearing stuff, but it's like, if everybody is locking down and everybody is doing this, and you're the one or two countries that don't do it, and then people die, you're like, well, I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't want blood on my hands. I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing. That way I don't get blamed, So it's not, and plus with the internet, we're all connected. We're all getting information from the same places. We're getting information travels at a very quick speed, where somebody from the US can get information to me as quickly as they can get information to anybody from anywhere in the world. So it's like it's much easier for information to just spread throughout the whole world. We're all connected. So it's this idea of like, oh, how did it happen to one country or another country? What's the difference? Like some imaginary lines that are on the ground. Like we're all watching the same, authorities. We're getting news from the same people. The same people are influencing the science that we're getting. And look at Big Pharma. Big Pharma is global. It's not an American thing. Like they sell drugs all over the US. They do, they have influence all over the whole world. So it's like this idea that like, like you said, Pat, like it's, I think if you just say it quickly and you're just like, well, what is everybody in on it? If you just say that out loud and you don't think about it, it sounds like, yeah, you're right. That doesn't make any sense. How is everybody in on it? But once you like start dissecting it, you realize like, okay, it's very possible how this information just scattered throughout the whole world. So, and nothing spreads faster than fear, and that's what happened. Everybody got afraid and everybody just started falling in line and listening to Dr. Fauci. And usually where the US goes, everybody else follows. Like I talk to Canadian people, I talk to people from other countries. They're always like, oh, the US does something, we usually do it right after them. So it's like there's a lot of like one country does it and then another country just follows suit. There's not a whole lot of thinking for themselves.
I think the censorship also, if people, most people that I talk to, at least here, nobody knows about the censorship, and then that makes it hard to explain because I mean,
where are you going to get the information, right? If they hear you say stuff like, "Hey, Del Big Tree Show," this and that, or you say the Ripple Effect podcast, or even if you just talk about a specific doctor, like, "Hey, this doctor is questioning what's going on and is making very good arguments and making logical sense."
Yeah.
Or even if somebody's like, "You know what? All that stuff he said, let me look into it because I think that stuff makes sense." I go online and I can't find it. And then all I'm finding is the opposite argument of like, everything's been debunked. All those guys are conspiracy theories. Vaccines are safe and effective. Listen to Dr. Fauci, listen to the US, listen to Bill Gates. Like that's all the information you get. So even if people actually want to learn something new, and even if people are skeptical and questioning what they're being told, even if they do want to go do their own research, they've made it almost impossible to do so.
Yeah. And
right.
also,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that it is a little bit like it is impressive, the whole censorship and coming together. It does sound a bit crazy because, I mean, it's a lot of things at the same time, like YouTube and Twitter and everything. I mean, I don't know if I would believe it if I was just lucky to happen to see it and people I followed, and otherwise, I mean, it would sound a little bit crazy. It really is a lot of people coming together, or at least a few people coming together and controlling a lot of stuff. And so, I mean, it's hard to explain it fast to someone or even show it. So I understand people being a bit skeptical. But I think if you could show the censorship, it would make it easier because I've noticed that part people don't really believe it. It sounds like because they have never seen it or even thought about it. So
Well, they either don't believe it or they're like cheering for it, you know?
could be a little bit.
Like 30,000 or however many thousand, 60 or something thousand YouTube accounts just got banned, and I see, you know, everyone's celebrating. So it's like
And that
everyone's
part
fine
is
with
strange.
censorship when it's, you know, when it's not, you know, their people.
That surprised me, actually. I've noticed some of it. We've had also on the radio people talking a little bit like it's a positive thing that, Facebook had to censor because blah, 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 blah. But I mean, I'm surprised that that works on people because everyone knows that, when censorship happens, usually a reason for it. And I mean, yes, history.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, something about burning books that I recall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. I mean, like you guys are saying, it's they celebrate it because it's not people that they agree with, but they don't see the big picture of eventually it's going to be people they agree with. And
Yeah.
so and the like I always say, you fight bad ideas with good ideas. You don't censor people. You don't, if you're open to exploring ideas and challenging ideas, you should want to pursue all these ideas. And you're like, you know what? For me as a human and an adult to come up with the best conclusion on what I think, I need to have access to all the information, and then let me filter out, let me remove and erase the things that don't make much sense, and let me keep the things that make the most sense. But if you don't let me have access to all the information, I can't do that. You're
Well,
controlling.
they say it's dangerous, but what they don't say is that who it's dangerous to. It's dangerous to them.
Good point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when they say it's dangerous, you're right. Yeah, like who is it dangerous to? It's dangerous to the bottom line for big pharma. It's dangerous for the media companies that prove that they have agendas and they're not just trying to protect people. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, they keep this idea of like medical misinformation, this because they use that term because they're like, oh, we're protecting people, because if you get the wrong medical advice, it could lead to negative effects on your health. You could do something that could kill, could harm yourself or whatever. Well, guess what? Look at dietary information. Nobody agrees on this stuff. I mean, you have the carnivores, you have the keto people, you have the vegetarians, vegans, all these people. Like they're constantly debating, and there's no actual I guess we haven't decided as a society like which one is not dangerous information, because we know that like each and all of them can make a valid argument on certain cases, and we let that all be out there. But it's like you could make the argument that like, okay, then why aren't you guys all coming together and deciding like, okay, vegans, maybe they're doing negative effects to their body by not eating animal meats or proteins that are healthy for you. So maybe that's misinformation. Maybe we should ban all them, ban all of them, or vice versa. Hey, maybe we should ban all the carnivore people, because that's medical misinformation. They're putting out information that could influence somebody to only eat meat. That could harm somebody. Like they're not even getting into that. Why? Because there's no fucking money in trying to influence the way people eat natural foods. So they don't even care about that stuff. But you could make the argument. It's like, where do you? It's almost like the free speech thing and censorship. Like, where do you draw the line? Is it first medical information, anybody who questions vaccines, and then it's going to be like, wait till we have a vegan as president, and then he's going to say it's medical information if you say anything that's pro animal meat or animal
Morrissey.
Yeah, so Morrissey, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it's endless. It's a endless chain reaction. And I think a lot of us, we can see that big picture of like, okay, even if I don't agree with this person, they have the right to say it. I mean, that's why I give Brian Rose a lot of credit in regards to like him defending David Icke, because he used to say like, I don't agree with him, but I agree with his right to say what he's saying. So that's all it is. Like, let's just agree that unless you're like blatantly saying go out and kill people or go out and hurt somebody, then just because they have different ideas, that can't be considered dangerous. And especially when it comes down to science, because I'm sorry because I'm repeating myself. I say this all the time on the show. Typically, before 2020, having doctors that have conflicting opinions is quite normal. You go see one doctor, he has an opinion. You go to another doctor, he says, no, I think it's this. You go to another doctor, I think it's that. Like, that's normal. And yet now you have one doctor that decides what the truth is, and everybody else is dangerous information. And it's like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's common for people to disagree on science or medical issues. Like, it's quite common. These are very complex topics. These are very complex things we're talking about. They can be interpreted in many different ways. So for you to decide that, like, we have decided this is truth, this is the only opinion that matters, the only one you can hear, and that's it. All conflicting opinions, is pseudoscience and will be fact checked and suppressed. I mean, that's so unscientific. I mean, science is constantly debunking itself. They decide this is what we think this is, and then some, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years down the line, like, oh, that whole theory was wrong. We found out this is right. So it's like, it's constantly debunking itself. So anytime they say like this is what the scientists are saying, anybody who says otherwise is pseudoscience. How do you know that pseudoscience doesn't become eventually the new science? So because they've came up with a new theory or a new experiment to prove something that we didn't know. So I mean, all this stuff is very interesting. I think the most important thing is just question everything. Like we all say in the alternative media community, I don't care what you believe, I don't care what ideology you have. The most important thing I think that we can all agree on is just question all narratives and question everything. But but thank you so much for being with me, guys. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Elias, for staying. What time is it in Sweden?
It's 11:15 now.
PM at night?
At night, yeah.
Oh, so you're preparing for kids, because what you're doing is you're already going to get very little sleep, and then when you have kids, you're like, when he keeps me up late, I'm already used to it. I'm up late all the time, anyways.
Oh, that could be. I've always been up late usually, but yeah, I'm guessing it's gonna change. I'm guessing extremely early with
maybe you'll do
kids.
Like my wife and I was more of a night owl. I was more the night person. She was more the day person. So I used to be up more when the kids were up at night. I'd be with them more, and then my wife would be more with them during the day.
Okay.
So it's it's a balancing act, but it's
it must be.
It's fun. It's fun. You feel like you overslept your whole life. You feel like like my whole life I thought I needed 8 hours of sleep. Now I'm surviving with like 4 hours of sleep every night. So
yeah, it's impressive. I wonder how people. It's gonna be strange.
Yeah.
Pete Holmes has a really funny joke about it. He says the best part of falling asleep is like the part right before you fall asleep, or the best part about sleeping is like right before you fall asleep, and after having a baby you get to do that 20 times a night.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah, when you're tired, nothing feels better than when you're exhausted and you need to sleep. I tell people all the time, I'm like, people are like, oh, I have a hard time sleeping. I'm like, dude, you need to like wear yourself out, like go work out, play a sport, maybe start lowering your sleep every night a little bit, because you might be oversleeping. That's the thing. Like it's a balancing act. I find myself struggle with that all the time. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I need another couple hours of sleep, and then I'll try to get another hour or two of sleep, and I feel worse than when I got 6 hours of sleep. There's something about a body in motion stays in motion. Like you get too much sleep, it's like your body goes in like hibernation mode where it just wants to be lazy all day, and it's hard to like snap it out of like that's mental state where when I'm getting a little less sleep, it seems like even if I'm tired, at least mentally, I feel like I'm there. Like I'm not like in hibernation mode. So it is this balancing act where it's just like, sleep is a good thing. And I see a lot, I know Joe Rogan's had quite a few people on in regards to the benefits of sleep. I understand the benefits of it, but I just think it's really easy to convince yourself you need more sleep than you actually need. And then you're oversleeping all the time. And then, you almost get a little lazy, so it's, but everybody's different, based on nutrition and how physically active you are and stuff. You could require more or less sleep. So, I know everybody's, and then diet can have effect on your sleep, alcohol, all that stuff, wine, weed, whatever. It can all have an effect on how you sleep and your quality of sleep too. So, but congratulations. This is your first child coming?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you know if it's a boy or girl yet, or?
No, I don't know. And maybe it's no, it's not early anymore. It's almost I think 5.5 months. So yeah.
Are you guys gonna wait to find out, or are you gonna find out before the birth?
No, No, we're just gonna wait and see.
Surprise? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Oh,
Old
is that
school.
unusual or?
In America, yeah, we're pretty you know, we usually like to find out as soon as my wife was like, "How early can I find out?" Yeah, let's go find out. And I'm like, you know, so I see both the excitement of like not knowing, and then you know, I guess,
yeah.
but I'm sure it's so you
Yeah, me too. I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't be wrong to know, but no, we just thought we'll
so
find out.
so you need to have two names ready, right? You have a girl
Yeah,
name,
that's true. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
either one. Well, if you lived in America, it'd be three names because then you'd have the neutral gender person who.
hmm
Kidding.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so that should be fun. So hopefully
Yeah, I hope
everything goes
so. Yeah.
well, and you know,
Yeah, we'll see the future. I don't know what's gonna happen here, but yeah.
hey, you know, the beautiful thing about having kids is that it puts a lot of stuff in perspective. You know, like you realize like it's easy to get caught up in all the stuff that's going on around us and all the stresses. Then you see
Yeah.
your smiling, beautiful baby, and you're like, none of that shit matters. Like you know, this is the most important thing is right here. So, and I know
Yeah, that's great.
people who've had kids recently and they're like, oh, you know, I'm putting a kid in such a crazy world. I'm like, you look out throughout history, we've always done it through the Great Depression, during the World Wars. You don't think that if you were living through living through the World Wars where you're hearing bombing outside and stuff like that, people wouldn't be like, this is a crazy time to have kids, we shouldn't have kids, you know? It's like, no, people still did, you know, people still did, and we'll get through it, you know? So
Yeah.
you know, we always do. So the best of luck to you and your girlfriend and everything. Hopefully I see you guys on another one. Thanks, Pat, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ricky.
Hey, thanks. I love these conversations because just like myself, I I always had like some self-confidence issue in regards to like holding conversations with intellects, authors, and stuff like that. And then in time you realize like, you know what, you get some really interesting people who don't have, you know, best-selling books and aren't filmmakers and famous people. So you know, that always helped me kind of get through some of my podcasts, and now doing these shows and just throughout the years connecting with my listeners, you realize like there's a lot of really, really interesting, well thought out people who are just average people who go to work and take care of their stuff, but you know, but they think about things and they have really well thought out opinions. So it's fun to give some of you guys a platform and share some of your own thoughts on the show.
Oh, thanks.
We
It's
appreciate it.
unusual to speak English. You
Hey,
have to get
great. You're
yeah, but it takes a while to um it's different. I used to play in a band, so we toured the US a lot, but
what type of music?
sort of I'm the worst at explaining, but it's like acoustic, sort of lo-fi, it's like organ and synthesizers also. So it's not like super soft, but the singer is really famous. I don't know if you know Jose Gonzalez. He's still in the US, or quite famous.
And
But
and he's still playing music.
he plays solo, and yeah.
I'm gonna
And,
look him up. Oh, so you played in a band with him?
yeah,
Awesome.
I do music on my own also, but no one knows about it. I don't do any promotion or anything. But yeah, I was in the band UNIP that together with him and Tobias, another friend. But we always played on and off. But US and Germany were the places that, you know, that worked the best. So I think we did maybe 5 tours in the US.
Wow.
Yeah. And also I've been on my own in the US quite some time. Also, like I said, my mom took me there early on. Our own uncles lives there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I mean, I think people who are into music, it's never surprising to me when I find out that they're like deep thinkers or they look at things from different perspectives, because I think that's all a part of like the creative part of our thinking and mind and imagination. Like that all goes hand in hand. That's all connected, where it's just like, we're used to seeing things outside the box and questioning things and just being creative in our thinking. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that you're a musician, but hopefully like I tell you guys on a lot of my intros, I'm hoping to do these like once a month. Maybe I'll do more if I have more time. I'll do more, but I'm going to do at least once a month. So hopefully I'll see you in a couple weeks on the next one. And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
really appreciate you staying up late with us.
This time works fine for me, actually.
Yeah, because I think the other ones I've done, I think we're at 7 o'clock our time or later in the day like that. So it would be really late. Yeah.
Yeah, I fell asleep. I think I wanted to go. Was it the first one or when you did the 300 episode? But I fell. Usually I used to be up a lot later, but I noticed that I feel better and when I sleep a bit earlier. But so I've tried to change it for a couple of years, because I used to be up like every day until 4 in the morning, and then I slept during the day. But I noticed I started to feel more and more sick because I never saw the sun, especially in Sweden during winter. So I try to change.
Yeah. It's they say that's kind of our natural pattern, is like when the sun comes up, that's when we should be getting up. When the sun goes down, that's when we should be going down.
Yeah.
So the closer you can get to that type of timing with the daytime and nighttime, it makes the most sense that our body's kind of in harmony with the universe or something.
Yeah, it's hard to change that. For a long time, I like deny, because I think it's hard with doing creative things, because that works better for me later. But then you feel bad during the day, and so
I think it's a lack of distractions, right? Because I think
yeah,
right, isn't that like that's how I was when I was writing music. I always did everything. I would write my poetry at night. I would write, my music at night, because I didn't have phones going off. I didn't have anything else to do. So it's like I could just focus on this. And there's something about the nighttime that puts you in like the mental mood, so
I think so too.
you're moody, you're in the mood, so it's like there's just something about it. Like when it's sunny out and it's like beautiful out, the last thing you want to do is like write some sad, depressing music, or so it is weird, but I think that's what kind of I'm the same way. That's why I've always been such a night person, because even when I was a kid, I was into music, writing music, staying up, watching documentaries or playing music, and then when I started going out, I just like going out. I like going out and staying out late, talking to people, drinking, having a good time. So I always, I'd always slept in a little bit, but you're right. There's something about like the closer you get to being in parallel with the sun, where it gets up when you get up and vice versa, then it seems like you do feel a little better.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But thank you so much. Then hopefully I'm definitely gonna do I want to kind of mix it up with like some of these shows during the week and some of these shows during our early one on a weekend. That way, people from whatever time zone they're in can join us. So I'll definitely keep in touch and make sure that the next one, we'll do one in the near future that you can make it to. And congratulations, like I said, with your coming, your baby on the way, and we'll be thinking about you, and it's I'm sure I'm not the first one to tell you it's going to be a life changer. So it's
yeah, I haven't met that many. I've been quite, even if we're not in lockdown, I don't hang out so much. I don't think, no, not that many people know about this. I mean, my dad knows now and my mom, but yeah, 2 friends maybe. Yeah.
so you haven't spreaded it too much yet?
No, it just haven't happened. I mean, I don't know. I don't, we haven't seen so many people. I think, no, we mostly hang out with my mom and yeah, I think, no. So I don't think I have heard that actually, but
Yeah. Well, that's like a common thing in America. If you're having a baby, everybody's like, it's going to change your life. It's going to change your life. And it's funny because I remember saying like, yeah, I get it. It's going to change my life. I've heard it from everybody. I get it. And then once it actually happens, you're like, holy crap, I didn't get it. I didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the big thing, like I use the example that it's like somebody trying to explain to you like what war is like, right? Like they could explain to you the noises, the fear of dying, all that stuff. But no, it doesn't matter how good they are using language to explain it to you. Like you wouldn't understand it unless you experienced it. And it's the same thing with having a kid. Like, I kept thinking like, okay, I get it. Everybody's explaining it to me. I get it. And then once you go through it, there's a connection to that child. And there's something that just happens that it changes your outlook a little bit. It just, your whole life goal becomes like protecting this child and nurturing this child. And it's such a beautiful thing. I mean, I never cry. And I cried both times like a wuss when my kids were born, when both my kids, and I cried a lot, and I was just of tears of joy. I was just so happy. And and so it's just like, and they're my kids are my best friends. I mean, I love hanging out with them, and it's awesome because right now you and your girlfriend are a couple, right? You guys are a couple. Once you have that child, you guys become a family. And that change is just awesome, and there's going to be things about having a child that's going to bring you guys together. Like I saw with my wife, like there's a lot of things like experiencing watching your child walk for the first time together. All these things are just like you're enjoying it as a family, and it bonds you guys. And then there's times where it's going to be like she's tired, she wants to get some sleep, and the baby's screaming, and so she's in a bad mood, and then you're in a bad mood because you haven't got any sleep, and then you start butting heads and arguing with each other. So there's going to be it's almost like there's this these ups and downs where there's like there's beautiful things about the relationship that are going to get even more beautiful, and then there's the down times are going to get even harder because you're going to have to deal with the stress of having a child. So there's a lot of ups and downs and a journey that you guys are going to go on together, but all of it's fun and it's all worth it. So I love meeting other people before they have kids and after they have kids, and kind of like see the experience. So hopefully we'll get to talk afterwards, and we get to if it's a beautiful girl or a beautiful boy, and see how the whole journey is going.
That would be great.
Thanks. Well, hey, have a great night. Tell your girlfriend I said good luck with everything, and
I will.
Congratulations, and maybe I'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, sure. Okay, take care.
Have a great night.